Hey, Dr. Ben here, and I am so glad that you are here to rock out session number 2 of Arbitrage 2.0. So I'm going to be real upfront with you and honest. For some of you, this is going to be the worst part to go through because there's no real, whiz bang marketing stuff in this. It's all tricks about how to deal with suppliers, how to get started and get ready to be a ninja before we get into the next section. I had to make sure that you guys have a great backbone for your business, and that's all about how do I source and supply and talk to vendors and make sure that I know what I'm looking for. So everything in this section, it's a very, very quick run through of everything here, but everything in here is very much little tips and tricks that we've picked up along the way when sourcing products. Okay, so this whole section is to prepare you for the next one where we're going to start going through branding. But you have to know how to communicate with suppliers, how to find them, how to use Amazon to really get some information before you talk to them. And that's what everything in this is all about. So I've tried to keep this as short as possible, but please go through every video inside of this section with a fine-tooth comb because there are little subtle hints that we've put in here that have been just huge for us because we've made mistakes. And I don't want you to make those mistakes too. So everything inside is all about how to actually source. I'm going to teach you about the things that we do before we get ready to source, what has to be in place. I'm going to teach you about what we do on Amazon before we get started with sourcing and the things we're looking for there. I'm then going to walk you through the process of talking to suppliers and finding them in the first place. And then after that, I'm going to walk you through the process of, how do you handle orders? What should you expect and what's coming when you get this stuff going? So like I said, some very basic stuff for some of you, but I guarantee you, even if you've ordered, supplies from people before and you've ordered private labeled products, if you go through this, you're going to pick up something new that is going to strengthen the process for you the next time you do it on your next order. Or if you're brand new, this is going to save you a whole lot of trouble. So I'm excited for you. Like I said, this is a different sort of section than everything else we're going to be doing throughout the stuff as we go through Arbitrage 2. But I promise you, this is going to be one of the most valuable sections that you go through if you pay attention, because everything about sourcing your products and not making certain mistakes, this is going to be the backbone of your business. Okay, so Dr. Ben here. I'm excited. In the next video, we're going to dive in and get started. I will see you as we get started with section number 2 of Arbitrage Magician 2.0. All right, so before we get into actually sourcing our products, we need to have a couple things in place before we actually go and do that. So if we're going to be spending, money on actually buying our own products and private labeling these things, then we have to have a couple things in place beforehand. Now, to some of you, this may seem, well, sort of elementary, but I want to make sure that you've got these things in place and you understand them before we get going. So I've got a list of things, really very simple list, that you can follow to make sure that you're ready to actually go to someone who can private label your products for you, because that's the grand scheme of things, having our own brand of products. The grand scheme of things here, we really want to have our own stuff, our own private label, and that's how you can really build something that's amazing. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to talk to you about the things you need to have in place before you actually go in and source this thing. All right, so let's do it. So a couple key things that we learned in Arbitrage 1. If you've gone through that process, you've really tested and run some very elementary tests actually, but you've gone in and tested to see if there's an actual demand for your product and if you've matched up a demand. So the key here is you can jump in very quickly in and out, and with the process of running a test ad, you can see, hey, is this working? So this is the first step that we take before we source long term. I want to know that I have a product that has sold 20 or more items in the span of 72 hours without a label on it, being a very generic item that we found and ran the arbitrage process with eBay and running an ad. Were we able to sell 20 or more of these in the span of 72 hours? Now, here's the thing. 20 is not a lot. It really, really isn't. If you're running a good targeted ad and you've really dialed your audience in, 20 is extremely easy to get in the span of 72 hours, especially if you do some time limit stuff that we've talked about in Arbitrage 1. But that's the real key. Can you do 20 or more in the span of 72 hours? And did you make a decent profit with that? Did you spend way too much on ads and not break even? but if you sold 20 in the span of 72 hours and you actually at least broke even, and that's all I'm looking for with this front end product. I know that sounds crazy because you've been taught all this stuff about, hey, I've got to sell this many t-shirts, and if I sell this many t-shirts, I'm going to make this much money, or if I sell this many of this item. But that's not the key. Anybody that has a real sales funnel, it's all about the back end. So if you sell 20 or more in 72 hours and you break even on your ad spend and selling that product, you've done pretty darn good. Okay, so let's keep going. The next thing is you need to know your audience demographics. If you're able to sell a decent amount and break even, that means you probably have dialed in who you're talking to, which means that your audience is matched up to your item, which is matched up to your ad and the copy that's on your store. So you're going to know your audience demographics, and you're going to know exactly who you're speaking to. Okay, so that's important. You have to know who your avatar is. You have to know who you're speaking to. You have to know who you're trying to sell this stuff to. Okay, after that, you need to understand the reason why they purchased the item. It's not enough to sell a bunch of stuff, okay? Because if you just happen to guess and fall into something on accident, you could get yourself in trouble by ordering a lot of inventory because you may not be able to recreate it. So what I mean by that is, let's say that you have an item that is targeted towards dog lovers. And those dog lovers, you sold a pin to them, and you thought it was because they were buying it and they wanted to wear it themselves, when in actuality they were buying it as gifts for someone else in their family. You could be completely off on your demographics because you were thinking, hey, I got to run more ads to this particular person because they're wearing it. But what if you actually knew they were buying it as a gift? You could actually tailor your ad to be more of a, hey, this is the perfect gift for this type of person. So not only do you need to know who you're selling to and be able to sell, a number of items to them, you have to know why they bought it. Was it a gift? Was it something they bought for themselves? Was it something that they bought because it was the right season for it? Meaning, was it a seasonal product? Tell me why. That's the key. Why did this person actually purchase this item? What was the real thought going on in their brain behind it? You have to have a pretty good understanding of that. And you can do that in a lot of ways. You can do it by asking your customers. You can do it just by the way they behave when they buy. You can really look at the way they behave when they see certain sorts of ads. But, if you really don't know, go in and ask them. Contact your customers and say, hey, I just wanted to know, why'd you buy this? Was it a gift? Was it for you? Tell me. And it's something that your customers will absolutely tell you. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. You need to be reasonably sure, okay, that there are more people out there that are just like your target audience. So if you're targeting, let's say, 1,000 people with your ad and you sold 20 in 72 hours, but you have no idea how to find 1,000 more people to actually buy your product, you're in trouble, okay? Especially with this lower ticket type stuff that's leading people into our funnel. So the idea here is, hey, can you find an audience that's like this audience, or can you find more of the same kinds of people out there? Did you just have a smaller sample? Because the thing is you want to make sure that there are enough folks out there. Now, some reasonable numbers is I like to look basically above, hey, are there 100,000 people out there that are just like my target audience, okay? And if there are, what are some offshoots possibly of those that are another 100,000? So for instance, the people that like Whiskey Baller, okay? I can target an audience that likes whiskey, that likes a certain brand of whiskey, and I can really dial that ad in based on that type of whiskey. But then can I target another group of people when I kind of, get through that audience? Can I target another group of people that likes maybe a different kind of whiskey? And so are there different ways that you can go about that? Now, that's pretty much it. You've got four main things. You need to have a product that sells 20 or more items in the span of 72 hours. You need to know your audience demographics. You need to understand the reason why they actually purchased the item in the first place. And you need to be reasonably sure that there are more people out there that are just like your target audience. And you can do that a lot by just going through the Facebook ad editor and saying, hey, are there similar audiences to what I've got? And do these seem like similar folks? If you can't learn that from the ad editor, you can always jump over and look at pages that are very similar to, your audience in the first place. So for, like I said, the whiskey audience, I just would jump from Jack Daniels over to Crown Royal. And that's a good way that we could actually do that. So there you go. That's the key things there. If you have any questions about it, feel free to hit me up inside of the private group. But that's the key. Those are the four things. So the next thing is, let's actually dive in. Let's actually do this. Let me start teaching you about sourcing. All right? I'll see you in the next video. All right, Dr. Ben back here with you, and let's get into the actual sourcing process when we get to going through the items. Now, in the last video, we went through what you need to have in place before you even think about doing this, because once you get into sourcing a product and private labeling it, you run a real danger. And that's the reason we go through the arbitrage process that we do in 1.0, is to make sure that we know exactly what we need to know before we get into this. And if you don't do that stuff beforehand, then you run the risk of ending up with inventory that you can't sell and possibly trying to sell something that you don't even like in the first place. So that's one of the key things. So in the last video, we talked about the things that you have to have in place. In this video, we're going to talk about the sourcing process. So let's go through. This is actually a set of things that I go through when I'm getting ready to source a product. All right, so let's dive in. First, I always use Amazon. I can use Amazon to find an item early on to see if it's selling well, but there's another way I can use Amazon that's very interesting. If I already have a product, I've already proven that it will sell well. Now I want to jump over to Amazon and do a little competitive research. So the first thing I'm looking for is the product selling well. This is not a must at all because we're marketers. We can sell things that aren't selling well on Amazon and we can do really well with them. But I want to see, is my product selling well? And I want to see, are there other products that are maybe related to it selling pretty well? So that trip over to Amazon, whether you already have your product picked out or not, that initial product, a lot of times when I go over to Amazon, I'm finding other products that are somewhat related to it that, I can add as kind of my next product down the road. So I make a lot of notes when I jump over to Amazon, but I'll go through that in just a couple of minutes in a different video. The next thing that I'm looking for is, how did my competitors brand or label their products? What are they doing that I can possibly get some good ideas on? When we go through the $1 million branding section in module 3, or section number 3, which is coming up very soon, we're going to be talking about how you get designers to basically do what you want them to do so that it ends up looking like what you want it to end up looking like. Now the key to that is a lot of times I tell my designer, hey, I kind of want it to look like this, but with this variation. And we'll take something that I think is cool and we'll make it better, which is even more cool. So that's what we're really going for with this. On Amazon, I'm looking for, is it selling well? Are there accessory products out there that maybe relate to it that are selling well? And grand scheme of things, how are my competitors branding themselves? And that's what I'm really looking for in that stage. What's funny is a lot of these products on Amazon are sourced through the same places you're going to be sourcing yours. So you can gain a lot of early knowledge right away, because a lot of the things that are on Amazon, you can go find where we're going to be talking about next. So the next thing is what I was saying. Where do you go find these products? I look for my product on a site called Alibaba. This is a collection of people who private label and will process and build products for you. So I have a very simple process that I use to search, which I'll show you in a couple of videos. And I prefer to talk to the sellers live. And that's the thing. A lot of people get on Alibaba and they send messages and it takes days on end. But there's a very special process to catching most Alibaba sellers online, and I'll walk you through that as well. So I like to talk to the sellers live and make sure that I'm actually rapping with them a little bit and getting a good back and forth going, and I'll go through that here in just a second as to why. So the next thing is I send them a list of questions, and I want to enjoy who I'm working with, and I want there to be a future with who I'm working with. So I send the people that I find that fit the criteria that I'm going to be talking about in a couple of videos, I send them some questions to further qualify them. And the one I'm really looking for here is this: is the first order that I'm putting in with them going to be easy for me to put my brand on and get to me, okay? Because I want to at least see it. And then the next thing is, could I work with these folks for 10 years? I don't want to work with someone who maybe I just have to put up with. I want to work with someone for 10 years down the road. And if I can find partners that are like that, then it's going to be a very pleasant experience overall. Now, the last thing is this: once I find at least one good vendor that I'm really happy with, I put in the time to go look for at least 2 other vendors. And here's why. I never want to be stuck with one supplier. If they go out of business, they don't manage their things well, I don't want my business to be over with too. Also, if they decide that they're going to overcharge me on something, I don't want to get stuck behind that and ruin my margins. So I want to find other vendors that can do the exact same thing that vendor number 1 did. And I try to find at least 2 extra. I also want to be able to leverage my suppliers against each other. Now, I know this may seem uncomfortable for you right now, but it's a lot easier to negotiate with a supplier who is there to do business with you, by the way. That's why it's so easy to work with suppliers. But if a supplier tries to do something that, hurts my business, I want to have other suppliers that I can possibly check with and say, hey, is this fair? Is this really good? Is this, or can you do better for me? And I can be able to leverage those relationships against each other or just to get a better deal. So those are the key things. Now, not a lot there, but I'm going to be covering everything I just told you about in depth throughout this entire section number 2 of Arbitrage Magician 2. So what we're going to do here now is everything that I just kind of glazed over with you, we're going to cover in depth, and I'm going to give you some over-the-shoulder stuff so you can actually go through and do some of this stuff for yourself. All right, so let's dive in the next few videos and how we're going to actually go through the majority of the rest of session 2. I'm going to give you some over-the-shoulder information that you can go implement to go get your products private labeled and to get ready. Now, we're not going to be ordering anything in this part. We're going to wait until we get through at least Section 3, where we're going to be talking about how to create your story, how to create your branding, how to do all those fun things. But before we get into that, this is a very good section for you because you're going to be able to know how to communicate with these sellers, and you can actually start diving in and communicating with them beforehand to get some of this information down. So by the time you actually craft your brand, craft your story, get your logo ready to rock, then you're going to be ready to actually do all this stuff in a very big way. All right, Dr. Ben here. I will see you in the next video. All right, so when we're going through the process of actually getting ready to source our products, I mentioned that we go over to Amazon for a couple very important reasons. Number one, I want to see if it's selling well. That's not a must with running our own store, but bonus. So that's what we're actually looking for there. Now, the other thing is I want to see what my possible competitors out there have done in terms of branding and what their pricing is like. I like to see what else is out there. So if you already have an item picked out, excellent. This is going to help you really dial it in a whole lot more so that you can get really set up before you go in and you source this thing. So let's actually jump in and let's do a quick search for something that we're going to be doing. So I'm just going to use the example for Whiskey Baller. So I'm going to use ice ball mold. Okay, so I'm going to go in and do ice ball mold and just give you a good idea of what's actually sitting out there already. Okay, so we've got a couple things. We've got several items that are doing decently well up here, and we actually want to see what's going on. So now that I've actually gone in and I have searched and I've got several items coming up, I'm wanting to see, hey, where are these things actually lying? Okay, so I'm going to jump in and I'm going to just open these items real quick. Okay, so here's one that is doing decently well, and let's actually jump down here and kind of see how well it's doing. If you go a little bit down the line here, you can see that it's 5,322 in all of kitchen and dining. Not too shabby, not awful, nothing to write home about, but not too awful. They're getting some sales, and they're doing some interesting things. Now, the cool thing is I can jump in here and I can actually check out some stuff here, and like the retro stuff, the branding there is doing pretty good, and you can actually get some interesting things on your copy. If you order a similar item, you can see what they're doing to sell their item copy wise, and so you can pull a lot of these things out. You don't copy these things, you don't ever copy these things for your own store, but it really gives you some ideas of what the bullet points should be when you actually go sell your own stuff. And these people are already selling, they're already at the top of the charts. By the way, you get to the top of an Amazon chart for an item by converting well. I mean, really, if you convert well, Amazon wants to move you up more. So by the number of people that hit your page through a search term, so if I search ice ball mold and like I went 3 pages in, clicked in one of these and I bought, that's a point in their favor. Okay, it's a little more complicated than that, but just to give you an idea. So the next thing is we went and looked at that one. Let's look at number 2 here. Let's open these guys up and let's see what they're doing. How well are they actually selling? So we go in, we look down here, and they're actually number 71 in kitchen and dining. People are buying this thing, and they're buying it hard. So that's what we've got there. Now, not much in the way of copy here. This is a bigger brand, but what we can see is, hey, these guys are actually selling decently well. Now, they're probably driving external traffic to this, but that at least tells us something. Okay, so let's get into the next one. This is a little more close to what we're doing. So let's open this baby up. And okay, so we've got some nice bullet points here that we can actually read through. They're not great, but they give us an idea of what they're doing. You can see their pictures and their branding that they've done, so you can get some good ideas there. And then you can dive down here and say, hey, they're 114 in kitchen and dining, so also doing pretty well. So that's 2 different sets that are doing really well here, and we got some more stuff with our branding. Now, we can jump around here. We can go into this a couple down. We can check out the best sellers. There's a lot of best sellers here. All right, so let's open up one more before we move on. Great ideas for your copy here. Really, really great ideas for your copy. You get some good ideas of the branding that they're using, how they're actually putting that together. And then let's dive down here. 1,735 in kitchen and dining. Not too shabby. So a lot of these different things are selling well. That's number one. It's great. It's selling well. It means there's a demand out there somewhere on the planet for this particular item. Past that, you start looking at how are these people branding? How are they doing their copywriting in their page? Those are the things that you need to notice. Basically, they have done a lot of the work into how you sell these things overall, and you can adapt that when you sell it in your own store. So Amazon's a great way to go look for new items, and I'm going to give you a little bonus here at the end of how to go look for new items if you don't have any item picked out. But the key thing here is this is what I do when I already have an item picked out to say, hey, is it really selling well on another network, which is Amazon? And how are they actually selling it? What is the branding? What's the copy behind it? Can I do some things and play off that and do better than they are and sell mine and be the top brand because I'm doing some really, really cool things that are very targeted at one audience. So there you go. All right, so a little bonus for you here at the end. What if you don't have a product yet? Would you actually do that? We're going to go into Amazon in the bestsellers. Now, all you have to do is actually Google Amazon bestsellers, and it takes you to a page, which I think is the second search result. It's going to look a little something like this. Okay, so what you're doing is you want to actually go in here, and I'm actually going to say, you know, I was in the kitchen and dining section, the home and kitchen, and for my whiskey baller or my ice ball mode. So I'm going to actually dive in here, and let's just see kind of what's selling really, really well overall here. So we're going to just jump into the bestsellers. It's going to take just a second to load. And then it's going to load up all these things that are selling well in the kitchen. So we can actually go through and start researching the things that are doing decently well. And the questions I always ask myself is, why are these things doing really, really well? You know, and that's a big thing. And you have got, you know, around 100 results here of the top 100, and you know, you can get deeper than that, but you can get a good idea of what's actually selling, and then you can turn around and say, okay, so we've got some lavender essential oil that happens to be doing well. Let me just double check, are all lavender essential oils doing well, or is there something this brand is doing that makes it special? So we've got lavender oil in here. What's interesting is I'm not, let's see, did we see that one? Not seeing it on this page, so they've probably got something special. Let's try lavender essential oil. See if it pops up. Okay, so lavender essential oil, still not seeing that in particular. But are these selling well overall? And this is what's interesting. We look into here. Let's look at this one. 378 in health and personal care. Not bad. Not bad at all. So let's look at this one. Not much done on the listing. 59 in home and kitchen. Not bad at all. So you're starting to see that, hey, this lavender oil is something that's doing really well. Maybe that's an idea for a product. The thing is I can hit the top charts by driving external traffic. So you can't just look at these top charts. You have to also go in and do a search for what you think the keyword is, and you have to say, okay, are all of these doing decently well under this product? If you see several of them in the search over all of Amazon that are doing pretty well, you can bet that it's probably a decent product. So that's what we do. That's how we use Amazon. Whether you don't have a product or you're, you know, trying to extend what you're doing, you can really get some good ideas there. Now the key here is don't just look for your product, look for accessory products. What are some other things that might do well inside of here that are also selling well? And that's what you want to be looking at when you go through there. All right, so Dr. Ben Atkins here. That's my process of going through Amazon. That's how I determine, hey, is this doing well? And then I do my market research, because when we get into section 3 of Arbitrage 2, I'm really going to be talking about branding, and it's extremely nice to have some other things to play off of and some shoulders to stand on when you build your own brand and you create your own story. And that's what a lot of these brands that are on Amazon have already done. They've already created something for themselves, and you can piggyback off what they're doing. Don't ever copy, but you can absolutely piggyback off what they're doing. All right, Dr. Ben here, and I will see you in the next video. All right, it's going to be covering a couple things to do with Alibaba, but before we get started, I'm going to show you how we actually search for our items in the first place. So kind of from the ground up, how we go in and we look for items once we have done, you know, some initial testing like we did in Arbitrage 1, and once we've kind of gone over to Amazon to do a little double checking. So now what we're going to do is I'm looking for someone to actually source the round ice ball modes like we have done in Whiskey Baller. Now, try to go back in time a little bit and put yourself in my place when I did this the first time, because I'm going to show you pretty much what we did to find this the first time and to get our supplier set up. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to jump in and I'm going to actually type in ice ball mold. Okay, and so we're going to click search. And so we've got a list of suppliers here. Now, a couple things I'm going to do is I'm going to actually check a couple boxes here. I'm going to go with gold suppliers and assessed suppliers. Now, you can get definitions of what these things actually are by hovering over them. But basically, these are some checks that they've gone through. Now, you can actually have on-site check, and you can do that, and that gives you an extra layer of protection, which means that either Alibaba or they have some sort of legal stuff here. But like I said, most of the time when I've just checked the assessed suppliers, that's been good enough, and I don't have to do an on-site check. The assessed supplier is a third party that's actually gone in and checked, and in my experience, we've had pretty good luck. So we check those things to actually filter, and it's actually going to filter this stuff down, and then you can actually jump in and start looking for all this stuff. So now we're going through, and you can see several of these things that are popping up for us to actually jump in, and you can get some prices. You can see a couple key things here as you're actually searching. Number one is you've got, hey, this is going to be your price per order. So this is between $1 and $1.20 per item. Okay, so through here we have a little bit harder to tell. It's like, it looks like it's around 3 cents to 30 cents per order. And you're also looking here for the minimum pieces that you have to order to run. Now this is where your budget gets in, and you have to really understand this. So if the minimum is $1 to $1.20, you're probably going to be spending $3,000 to $4,000 for a minimum order. That's not your sample that you're going to order, by the way, but that's going to be for your minimum order that you're going to put in. Okay, so after that we dive down. You can see all the minimum orders, all of the estimated pricing, and you can jump in. So for this one, for instance, we're looking at 15 cents to about 30 cents. And we've got a minimum order of 500 pieces. So that's a good start too. A lot of things that we jump in and we want to find out. Now, here's what I like to do. I like to actually get on when I'm in the US, I like to get on right around between 11 o'clock at night, between 3 o'clock at night, because for a lot of these suppliers, they're going to be over in China. So we're getting them kind of in the middle of their day. So what happens is you'll notice at that time of night, you're getting a lot of chat nows. And chat nows are the ones that I'm actually looking for. I want to see, hey, that they've got these chat nows. Now, if you go through and you don't see any chat now, no big deal. You can always click Contact Supplier, and you're going to get something that looks a little like this, where you can actually fill in your questions, which we'll go through in another video. But the key is I like to get answers fast, because the supplier is going to throw me back things that are questions for me that I need to answer, and I want to answer them quick. So you can actually click Chat Now here, and when you do that, you're going to have a window pop up. Now you have to have an Alibaba account. Go ahead and set that up, but it's going to pop up a chat window where you can really get in and go back and forth. When I give you your questions, you can actually ask those, and they can ask you questions back as you go through with that process. So when we go in, that's what I'm doing. I'm selecting these two things. I'm doing a search, and I'm trying to find, who has the pricing that looks good to me, who has the minimum order that looks good to me based on my budget for when I actually do order. And then I'm going to actually go in and start chatting with these folks. Okay, I want to find some really, really good folks to work with, and that's what we're going to be doing there. So that's it. That's the basics of what we're doing when we're on Alibaba. I've got several other things I want to cover, including what you ask these folks, as well as a way to get a lot of quotes at once from a lot of different people, which we'll go through as well. So there you go. That's what we've got. I will see you in the next video, where I'm going to start talking about the things that we actually ask these folks as we go through and we start wanting to make an order. All right, Dr. Ben here. I'll see you in the next vid. Hey, Dr. Ben back with you here, and now I want to go through the things that you're going to ask these particular sellers when you contact them. And you don't want to ask all these things at once and seem like you're just randomly shopping and you're a spammer. You want to actually have a conversation with them. So with most of the people that we try to work with, because they look attractive in the search that I just showed you in the last video, we're actually asking these things one at a time. That's why I say you want to try to find someone who's online so you can get these answered quickly and you can have a nice back and forth conversation. Now, my thing is be respectful of everybody you ever talk to. Don't be intimidated because they want to do business with you. You are helping them make money. It's their job to help you. So don't be intimidated. Don't be afraid to negotiate a little bit. But understand that you need to be extremely kind to these folks because they're out there working just like you and I. And I know, dirty word, working, right? But that's the thing. We're going to be very respectful of them because they're going to be helping us out and possibly a partner for the next 5 to 10 years. So these are some questions I like to ask. I don't send all of these at once. I send them one at a time and get an answer. One at a time, get an answer. I like the chat on Alibaba because I can get these all answered very quickly. Now, there's going to be some things that come up that, are going to be extra questions that you're going to ask based on, your product, your personal situation, or possibly, something I haven't thought of yet. But these are going to be some great things to actually get you started. So here's basically my scripts. Hey, I'm very interested in blank. I was wondering if you could answer the following questions for me. And then we go through and I actually ask all of these questions. This will actually be below the video somewhere too where you can download it. So the idea behind this is I'm asking these questions even before I'm ready to order. So by the time I get ready to order, tell them, okay, I've got to get the logo finished so I can send it to you, or I've got to get my branding finished. But there you go. Now, if you already have your branding, if you've already gone through session 3 because it's live and in front of you, cool. You're ready to go and you can go ahead and order with these questions and get everything out of the way. But if not, if you're not even ready with your logo yet, you can still contact these sellers and line up a good list of 3 to 5 sellers that you might want to work with. So here's the general gist of it. If I order 500 with my logo and packaging, what would my cost per item be? Why do I open up with 500 instead of can I order a sample from you? It's because you want to appear serious. You don't want them to think you're just trying to order one of an item and get it for decently cheap or whatever. You're trying to appear serious, like you really are, locking in something. Okay, so the real key here is when you jump in and you actually say, hey, if I order your minimum order quantity with my logo and packaging, what would the cost per item be? That's a much more serious question than do you do samples? Okay, so we don't lead with samples. The next thing is what would your shipping cost be to ship them all to me at, and then here's my shipping address. This is so you can actually figure out, hey, this is my cost per item. This is my cost for shipping all of the items. So in the grand scheme of things, these 1 plus 2 equals how much total and how much per item. And that's where you start getting into your margins. The next thing is what's your maximum capacity if we need to order a lot of these down the road because, it's worked out well. This lets them know you're looking to become more serious with them. You're escalating the relationship quickly. How long would it take to get an order of these 500 to our location? How about 5,000? Escalating, but you also need to know this. If you need to get 5,000, how long would it take? How long or how much would it cost to get a sample with our logo on it? So created, shipped, sample with our logo, so it's the actual finished product, not just a sample of the item. How quickly can I get the sample after we order it? Okay. Can you send me a picture of the item before you actually ship it? So when you actually create the item, put our logo on it, can you actually send me a picture so I can see if it looks right before we have to wait? What kind of packaging options do you have if we want to change something, and what does that do to the price? How do I pay you? PayPal is preferred due to the protections. I like PayPal, by the way. It's just something that's nice because PayPal is built to protect you. A lot of these vendors will not do PayPal down the road. When you start ordering bigger quantities, you'll have to set up something different just because of the way the Chinese government works. But for your samples, a lot of the time you can actually make that work pretty well, which is good for our purposes right now. And the next thing is I like to get them out of Alibaba mode. I don't like using Alibaba chat long term. I want to get them on Skype, email, cell phone, whatever it is. And if I get someone that gives me their cell phone, I know they're serious, and that's a big deal to me. But Skype, email, those are 2 very big things. So those are the questions that I really ask. And the cool thing is when you ask these questions, you're going to get a sense of the person that you're working with. You're going to get a sense of their company and their culture, and you're really going to start to understand if this is someone, like I said, you got to answer a couple questions. Is this someone that's going to be easy to work with and get things done quickly? And is this going to be someone that you can work with for the next 5 to 10 years? And those are the questions that you really want to answer when you're going through this process of actually asking them these things. All right, so there you go. I will make sure you have a download of this below the video so that you can grab it and, basically copy and paste this stuff. But that is the general idea of what we're trying to get done when we go through and we contact sellers. And it's going to get most of your questions answered right out of the gate. So there you go, Dr. Ben here. Hopefully that helps you, and I will see you in the next video where I'm going to be explaining a little bit more about how you can use Alibaba to get a lot of this stuff done really, really quickly. All right, see you in the next vid. Hey, what's going on? Dr. Ben here. Now I want to show you a quick way that you can get some really good quotes and samples really, really quickly. So AliSource Pro is something that they built in to help you get more quotes faster. And I wanted to walk you through it real quick because you'll probably see it when you're on the site and wonder what it is. So I thought I'd go through it with you and show you how you can use it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to jump into here and do get quotation now. Now you need to be signed in, but here's what we're going to do. I'm going to type in ice ball mold. Okay, product detailed specifications, and here's what I'm doing. I want to buy an item that looks like this. And brand it the same way that they have. I have a few questions as well. Okay. See attachment. Okay, now I'm going to actually set up a couple things here. Okay, and I'm going to actually upload my list of actual questions that I have. So I've got a list of questions that we're going to put in there, and we're going to actually send them to them so that they can answer those questions for us. Okay, so I'm uploading that. Now, a couple things here is they won't let you actually do website information. So let's see if we can't take care of that real quickly. Okay, so we've got that in. My order quantity, I want to do a minimum of 500 pieces. So we can do that, and then I'm going to do get quotations now. Okay. Okay. So we've got a buying request submitted that people are going to start sending us stuff to, and then you can go to manage buying request and you can see kind of what you've actually put in there. Okay, so that's basically what we've got there, and right now we're just going to start waiting for these to start coming in. Once you start getting them, you'll be able to jump in and start answering these things. So it gets very interesting very fast because well, you get some very interesting information really, really quickly. So you can start sorting through these really well. And I don't start with this usually. Usually I ask one or two vendors and I find one or two good ones. This is what I do when I need to find accessories. So you notice I sent them to my own website. It's because I'm looking for accessory suppliers that can help me do more of what I'm already doing and have backups. So that's how I use this mostly. But this is a very cool thing if you wanted to just start out of the gate and get a lot of requests and a lot of people wanting to work with you at once. So just a nice little trick there. You don't have to use this at all, but it's something that is in place that they just started not too long ago that is very, very handy that you can get rocked out. So there you go. Like I said, check that out. If you have any questions, please let me know. All right, Dr. Ben here. I'll talk to you soon. All right, so a couple things that you need to expect when ordering products, and I just want to get this out there so that everybody understands you're going to run into walls, okay? You're going to run into issues, you're going to run into problems, and that's okay. One of the real key things is you have to understand with all these different suppliers you're running with, a lot of times there is no standard logo size. There is no standard packaging size. You know, it's not like that's how it rolls. So you know, when you're getting into actually talking to them, you know, about your logos or, you know, anything that you're wanting to add to the product, the packaging, things like that, the questions that I gave you are the base. But they're going to have sizing things. You're going to go back and forth. You're going to get frustrated. And I'm here to tell you that that's a good thing. Not that you're getting frustrated, but the fact that you have to beat your head against the wall a little bit to get this to work the first time and to learn a little bit with each new supplier, because each new supplier is a little different. But the fact that you have to do that means that it's going to be hard for the person who gives up easily. And that's why I'm able to build an amazing business in a lot of different niches, because a lot of people give up on just the supplier part and, you know, private labeling. And, you know, that's why it's such a big deal to hold that product in your hand the first time, because you did go through a little crap. So I'm just going to tell you, there's going to be very few of you out there that actually go through this. And the first time you talk to a supplier, it's going to be the smoothest process in the world. But you got to understand that's okay. With the questions I gave you, it'll get you started, but it's going to spawn some new questions. You're going to have to answer that. If you run into any issues, come into the group and ask, and we'll be glad to help you. There's no way I can cut a video on size specifications, anything like that, because just to be honest, it's going to be different for every product. Now, when we get into logo and labeling and things like that, I'll help you with print quality, things like that. But I want you to understand you're going to run into some problems. So a couple things I want to say about ordering your products and what to expect. So up to this point, you've gone through, you've found some products, you've negotiated, and you've gotten to the point where you're ready to actually go in and pay, for your sample. And so I want to walk you through the process of after you pay for your sample, you're getting ready to actually order full-on product. What's the actual process? So let's go through it. The first thing is it's going to be 1 to 2 weeks to get your first sample in. So when you actually order a sample, that's typically going to be the quickest you ever get anything from them. They have to actually go in and put a logo on it. So that's the thing is once you actually have your branding done and they're going to put a logo on it and you're actually doing the ordering, yeah, they're going to actually put a logo on it, do the printing. And what I like to do is I like to say it's 1 to 2 weeks for it to get printed and to get from here. Before they ever send it in, though, and this is a little tip that's not on the slide, before they ever send it in, have them take a picture and send it to you. So a lot of times they'll send a picture and I'll be like, maybe the logo's a little off, and I'll say, we got to reprint it. But most of the time when they're sending that picture, they're going to have some style to it too. They're going to say, you know what, this doesn't look right. Let's do another one before I send them a picture. It's not a delayed reaction. So the cool thing is asking them to send that picture to you once the logo's on and they're getting ready to ship. That's huge. Now, once you get to that point, it's going to be 1 to 2 weeks to get your first sample in. Okay, so once you get your first sample in, you're looking for a couple key things. This is to actually inspect the logo and the branding, not your overall quality, because you've got one or two samples and you can't really inspect the overall quality of a run off 1 or 2 products. So don't mistake that if this one looks good, the whole thing's going to look good, because this is the best of the best. This is their work producing one, and they could labor over one. But when you start dealing in large numbers, there's going to be defects here and there, so you have to really watch out for that. So when you get your sample in, you're looking, hey, does this look good? And that's the whole ball game. So when it looks good, you actually are going to reply back to them, say, hey, this looks good. I'm ready to order a full line of these. Okay? Now here's the deal with ordering a full line. Go with the minimum order quantity. Okay, so if the minimum order quantity is 500, you like the sample, order the minimum. Even if you need, 1,000 to 2,000 to 5,000 soon, there's going to be some issues here. Okay, there's some possible issues that are going to come up, and the main key thing is we're going with the minimum to start. Your first actual order is going to take at least 2 to 4 weeks, okay, to get in, for them to print a bunch of them and actually send them to you. Now, once you get these, you're going to have them ship it to you. Okay, now your 500 that you got in, you're going to start looking at the quality, not just at one of them in the box, but several of them. So when your order arrives, you're going to actually send some feedback. But here's how you actually do the feedback on these things. You're going to pull them at random. Okay, so that's the next thing. You're going to pull random samples out of your, let's say, 500 and open and inspect. That's after you've actually contacted the seller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the seller, hey, they arrived, and I'm actually going through the samples tonight. I'll be back to you and let you know how it turned out. But when you first contact the seller, just tell them it arrived. Nobody does that with these people. They get these products in, they get their 500, they're so excited to go through them that they forget about reaching out to the person that's been helping them and to let them know. That's a part of building a relationship that lasts 5 to 10 years. But reach out to them and say, I got it, I'm going to inspect it, keep them posted on the progress. Okay, so that's just a common courtesy. But then pull random samples and inspect. If everything good with the samples, and and you're happy with that and it's all good, awesome. Okay, here's the question I ask: would I be happy if I ordered something like this off the internet and got it? Am I going to be happy with what I got? That's key. If you're not, then we've got some problems here, and we have to figure out what doesn't make you happy. And you, for the first time, you're going to have really looked at this with customer eyes when you get these in and you get a full run of them. So here's the thing. Any weaknesses, and could those weaknesses be strengths? So here's the thing. When I ordered the Whiskey Baller products the first time, I'm going to be honest with you, the first run that we got, I ordered them and I thought they'd be bigger. I thought we were getting the bigger size balls. But then when I started looking at them, I said, you know what, a strength of what we have is that they're actually, you can fit 2 of these into a glass. So what I thought was originally a weakness, we actually turned into a branding point for us, and it actually worked out really well. But when I first got the first run of Whiskey Ballers, I wasn't happy, but then it actually shaped the way that we built that brand in the long haul. So don't always assume that something you think is a weakness is a long-term weakness. It can absolutely be something that is amazing and turns into a real strength for you. But those are the things that I actually go through. That's the process, and just a couple key tips that I went through there that I hope you really took note of, because we've made mistakes, and those mistakes have shaped this process. And the idea is you're going to make some mistakes too, but hopefully going through this process will help minimize those mistakes for you. Okay, so I appreciate you going through this. Like I said, as a whole, this is an interesting section, because this is not what we like to do as marketers, is go order product. What we like to do is make the product look good and sell it, which in section 3, we're going to be going through all of the make it look good parts so you can sell it. But understanding the key things that you've learned inside this section, while it was a short section, there was several things through this section that I hope you understood were big. So I got one more video. We're going to be talking about what we're going to be doing to get next, to go to the next session and get ready. But I wanted to make sure we got this out of the way so you knew what was coming once you get your branding and logo done, and you can move into that. So one more video. I'm going to tell you kind of what the next steps are before we move on to session 3. I hope you've enjoyed everything so far in session number 2. All right, I will talk with you in the next video. All right, now session 2 is one of my least favorites, and what I feel is one of the most monotonous processes, just because of the actual content that we teach. You know, there's no whiz-bang marketing stuff in section 2, but it really is important that you go through this stuff before you start getting overboard with the branding and the traffic and all those things, because, listen, nothing else matters in this process if you don't have a good relationship with suppliers and you don't know how to talk to them. Because the thing is if you have a bad relationship with suppliers and they decide to cut you off, you're done. And you can have the best product in the world, and if your supplier goes out from under you and you've done the wrong things and you don't have multiple suppliers, you're in trouble. So I hope that even though this is one of those more basic sections of the entire process in sourcing products, I hope you see the value in some of the things that we taught you throughout this process. It's small little things that make all the huge difference, whether it would have been, you know, the Amazon finding other branding things, or, you know, how to talk to your Alibaba people. You know, those people are great. And if you don't understand how to talk to people and have a relationship, which is what this really is all about, and how to point people a certain way, you get in trouble. So some key things that we mentioned during this section, especially with, you know, how to look for other branding on Amazon, are going to play into the next session really, really well. So in the next section, I'm going to start teaching you about how to draw, you know, the path. What's the story? You know your avatar. How do you create a story around your product that appeals to them in a huge way? And then how does that story shape the branding? And how do you use all of that stuff to really blow it up and take it to the next level? So in the next section, we're going to really start going into what I think is probably my favorite part of this entire process, which is building a story around your product. This is where we really get to be marketers again, and things get really, really fun. And when you have that story and you have it around a certain product, you can start building accessory products around it. So the brand is really the key as to who you are, and that's what we're going to be doing in the next section. So before you move on to the next section, make sure you've got everything mastered in here. You start reaching out to suppliers, even though you don't necessarily have a logo or a brand yet. Start getting that information down, because you're going to need to talk to those folks very soon, because once you get this brand stuff down, you want to move quickly. So thanks for going through session 2. I know some of this stuff, like I said, is not the whiz-bang, you know, marketing fun stuff, but this is the stuff that's really going to be the backbone of your business, because really knowing the time that it takes to get products, knowing how to communicate with sellers is huge in this business. If you don't do that with a physical product business, you're in trouble. So I hope you enjoyed all this. I am excited to see you in session 3. We're going to be starting probably, like I said, my favorite of everything, which is building the story around your brand. So Dr. Ben here. I will see you in the next part of Arbitrage Magician 2.0. Hey, Dr. Ben Atkins here, and welcome to session 3 of the Arbitrage Magician 2.0. In this session, we're going to be covering the ins and outs of creating a real brand for your product and really creating a story to help sell that product. One of the key components of this entire session is to understand that, all other things being equal between you and your competitors, that your customers will buy from you because when they buy from you, they have permission to tell your story. And when they have your product, it gives the centerpiece of that story. And stories are really what it's all about. And that's how I have always been very successful in my marketing, is always having stories to go with what we do. The reason people will pay me 5 times as much money, 10 times as much money for what we do is because of the stories that are involved and the feeling that you get when you buy something from me. That's both in our online marketing as well as in our physical products. So a lot of good stuff coming. I'm not going to belabor the point. I just want you to dive in. On the side of this page, you can get started. Watch everything in order, and I promise you're going to be blown away with what you learn. This is my favorite part of this entire process because this is where we really get into being marketers and creating some amazing things. All right, get started by using the links on the side of the page. I cannot wait for you to go through all this because I know that this module by itself can absolutely change the way you look at the world and change the way you look at being a marketer. So enjoy. I'm excited for you to dive in, and feel free to jump in the group and ask questions after you get through with this session. All right, I will see you on the inside. Hey, what's up? Dr. Ben Adkins here, and welcome to session number 3 of the Arbitrage Magician 2.0. In this particular session, this is going to be where I have the most fun with you, because now I'm going to teach you how we go from what you're looking at on your screen right now, which is this nice generic thing that we're arbitraging on eBay, and we go to something that looks like this, a full-on branded product that looks amazing and it's ready to sell. So this is a little bit more of a process than you might think because there's a lot that goes into it before you just go hire a designer or you design this yourself. You really have to take a step back and you have to know everything about your market. You need to know who you're selling to. You need to know what motivates them. You need to know what gets them up in the morning, what they're afraid of, and really who they're trying to be in the world. Okay, so in this session, we're going to be going through several different things. One of the main things is how to create a story behind your product, the kind of story that's really going to be something that people want to tell. And when they tell that story, it sells your product in the process. As we're doing that, we're going to be going through several key things about your product that make it unique, its strengths, its weaknesses, and all that fun stuff to build your story. So that's what's coming up in the next little bit. After that, we're going to go through something that's very, very, very important. It's how to take pictures of your products or get pictures made for your products so you've got something that looks really nice like what we've got on this screen. Okay, so I'm excited to walk you through this process. I'm excited to help you brand your product. To brand your product, you absolutely have to have your story intact. You have to know who your audience is. You should have learned that already by doing the arbitrage process and really figuring out who responds to your ads and who that audience really is. All right, so I'm excited. Let's go ahead and dive in. In the next few videos, we're going to be rocking and rolling and getting into it. So in this first video that we're going to be doing in the next video that you go to, we're going to start diving into the key things about your product that you need to have in place. So what makes a story viral? What do you need to know? And that's the next group of videos that we're going to be doing. All right, I'll see you in the next video. I'm excited. Welcome to section number 3 of the Arbitrage Magician 2.0. Hey, what's up? Dr. Ben here, and here pretty quickly, we're going to be talking about your story, the story behind your product that you tell to really get people behind you and to understand what your product is about and why it really exists. Before we do that, though, we have to really start to look around the market and we have to answer some very serious questions. And for most people, these are very, very hard to answer and very hard to look in the face honestly. But you need to answer them, okay? And if you can't answer them, then you need to do some soul searching and really come up with an answer. Even if you have to make that answer up a little bit, you need to answer this question. So the first question that I really want you to focus on is very, very important, and it's this. What makes my product unique? Now, you've heard that before, but really, let's talk about the in-depth inside stuff. Now, what you're seeing on your screen is an example of where we started. You know, what we saw with this ice ball mold, and I'm using this to hopefully give you some insight as to how we went through this process with this particular mold. Okay, now, obviously, we're on Amazon right now. We search ice ball molds, and you know, if you were to really look at this product, it's very similar to my actual products, from color all the way down to everything. You start looking down the list, there's tons of products that look pretty much like my product. And I gotta say, what is it that makes us stand out? What is it that makes Whiskey Baller, this particular product here that's so much fun and it has so much personality? What's the difference besides a logo on the front? What's the difference between my product and their product? Okay, because if you look here on Amazon, you look at eBay, you see lots of things pretty much selling very similar things. And you have to get to the bottom of what is actually being sold here. Now, when we're on Amazon, when we're on eBay, most of these folks are just selling a commodity because they truly believe that they are selling round ice. And that's it. They're selling round ice. And we're not selling round ice, okay? If we were only selling round ice, then it would absolutely come down to price. It would absolutely come down to, who shows up at the top of the listings. It would be that simple. But we're not selling ice, okay? And this is the thing that you have to get down to with your product. You got to understand you are not selling what you think you are selling with your product, okay? You're selling something much deeper. So let's talk about what we're selling here, and let's really get deep inside with what we're selling. So a couple key things you need to answer is, what is it about your product that really strikes at the heart of your consumer? Because if they just bought on logic, price would be it, and something like this would sell just as well as our Whiskey Baller product, but it doesn't. And the reason is because we understand we aren't selling ice, we are selling cool, okay? We are selling something to a certain market that makes them feel cool. Now, let me explain that a little bit deeper. The Whiskey Baller product, the round ice ball mode, it is something that when you see it in this form, it's just round ice. But when you see it in this form, we understand that we are giving guys permission, mostly guys, some gals, but we are giving guys permission to talk about drinking whiskey. Now, there are some stigmas here because, drinking, it can be seen as something that is not a very desirable trait. It can be seen as something that is bad. There's a lot of bad things about it. But here, we are giving guys permission to talk about whiskey and to be a classy thing, a cool thing. So you got to understand, while this product is round ice balls, and we're selling a round ice ball mold that helps make them, we're really not just selling that. We are giving people permission to do something, okay? We're giving people permission to talk about drinking, to drink and to start a conversation based on their love for whatever it is they may be drinking. Now, obviously, we've aimed at the whiskey market, and the reason we aimed at the whiskey market is because that particular market of drinkers, we found out, is what you would call, they like to believe at least, that they are a classier drinker. This is a kind of group that it's almost like fine wines. A fine whiskey is very hard to find to this crowd. So this is the kind of thing, this is the kind of audience, they want an excuse to talk about whiskey. And how do we do that? Well, we give them a product that's very easy to spot, very conversational. Now, any whiskey in a glass, I don't care how expensive it is, how great it is, it doesn't matter. It's going to look about the same, and there's no real cause to talk about it. But when you see this ice ball mold inside of one of these glasses, it's going to start a conversation because it doesn't look like a typical ice ball mold, and that leads our whiskey drinker into a conversation about what they already love to talk about, which is whatever kind of whiskey they're drinking, how classy it is, blah, blah, blah. So you got to understand, we understand when we are selling this, we're selling cool and we're selling a conversation starter. And that is the main thing that separates us from our competition. We make drinking whiskey look even cooler than what it maybe already did look, and we give people permission to talk about it. So really here, it is a very interesting concept because we make something that might not be seen as cool, might not be a conversation starter, and we give permission to people to talk about it because, hey, if we've got this great site, we've got this great product, we've got this very discussion-friendly logo and idea here, then it must be okay because someone is giving them permission. And I hope you understand that. People are only looking for one thing in their lives most of the time, and that's validation. Okay, validation. Once they're not, once their safety needs are met, once they're they're not trying to get air, water, food, any of that, validation is a very important part of your day-to-day life. Every day we want to know that we're smart, we're good looking, whatever it may be, whatever the hobby that we're into, that we have permission to be into that, or other people like it and we're not just weird. So what we're doing here is we're providing a form of validation to people by giving them this particular product. And here's the key. All of our branding came from that simple concept. We were going to validate people. We were going to make it classy. We're going to talk about how to make the whole process even more classy. So our ads, all the way down to our images, all the way down to the way we photograph our products, to our logo, it's all about simplicity and class to class up this process of drinking whiskey. So the grand scheme lesson here, because it's just been a lot of talking, I want to move on to the next thing, is if you have a product that is very similar to other products out there. Now, these guys are just selling ice molds. They're not aiming at any particular audience. They're not trying to validate anybody. It's just a commodity, okay? They think they're selling ice molds. But with us, we are selling validation. We are trying to validate our audience and tell them, hey, it's okay to drink, and why not do it in a very classy way, and this is how you do it. And then we give them the product to buy to make that even more of reality. Okay, so that's the thing. Your product may be a little bit different, and that's okay, but that's what you have to figure out. What makes your product different than all those other things out there? If it doesn't have some whiz-bang feature about the actual thing, because my molds are the same other than this logo, which is mine, I can't provide you with anything different with this other than the fact that we have used this product and this branding to validate something that you already believed about yourself, or you already believed about a habit that you have, or something that you enjoyed. So there you go. You have to go in. You have to find the thing that's unique about your product. And if you don't have something about the actual product that's unique from someone else's, other than maybe a logo, then you have to start bringing into your story about your product a form of validation or something that's easy to share, a story. And as we move through this, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the story that we tell with Whiskey Baller. All right, like I said, I hope you understand that. This is, in this sort of thing, it's more art than science. So you might want to come back and listen to that over again, what I just went through, to get a little more of a sense of it and what we're talking about. And in the next couple of videos, I'll make sure we really drive this point home. Branding is not easy. This is something you'll have to stress over. This is something you'll have to really, really think about. But now that you've been through the process, you know your audience, now you can really start testing this. As you go along, you'll dial it in even more. But being able to knock this out of the park by starting with what we talked about here and what we're going to talk about in the next couple of videos is extremely powerful. So keep that in mind. If you don't have a product that is insanely unique other than maybe a logo or something here and there, then you need to build a story that is based on validating a belief that your user has, something that starts a conversation for them and gets them talking about something that they like or makes them feel better about themselves. All right, Dr. Ben here. I will see you in the next video. We're going to be starting to talk about the strengths of a product and the weaknesses of it as well. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Hey, Dr. Ben back here with you, and in this particular video, I want to go over your product's strengths. Now, you're looking at a page on the Whiskey Baller site where we have our features and our benefits, and it's all listed out nicely so that we sell our product really well. I'll go over that in a future video to kind of give you an idea of how we came up with that. But the first thing I want to do is really give you an idea of how we find the strengths of our products. We already found that in the last video our product was unique because of how we positioned it, because we couldn't position the Whiskey Baller product is much different than a lot of other things out there as far as features and benefits. It was really about the branding and the position that we took and the framing that we took with our ice ball modes. And for those of you that have looked at this particular site and wondered why we're only aiming at people who drink whiskey and not everybody who uses ice, that's why. So let's talk about the strengths of our products. All right, so the first thing is with this particular product, we've got some really nice things. One, it's simple and it's light. Okay, so very, very lightweight. And we started noticing that you had a bunch of people that wanted these ice ball modes, but they wanted more than just one
mold. Okay, so they were looking for 4 at a time. So this particular mold, while it's smaller ice, which I'll talk about in the weaknesses section, while it's smaller ice, you do get 4 ice balls per mold, which is pretty stinking cool. So the cool thing about this whole thing is we were able to get 4 molds or 4 ice cubes within one mold. So we actually turned that into a very big strength for us. Okay, perfect size when drinking. Like I said, I'll talk about this in the weaknesses because we actually thought this was a weakness at first, but we'll go around into that in a second. The next thing is we had a very cool thing about how round ice melts slower. Now, whether that's overly true or not, I think it is true from the science that I've read, but there's some people that say that it doesn't work that way. But there is a whole camp of people out there that because of the way that melting works, that the round ice ball mode actually stayed colder longer. So that's something we actually have set up and we talk about within here. Now, the other thing is it's silicone. And with silicone, it's dishwasher safe. It's a lot harder for germs to stick around on it. Plus, a very cool strength of our product is it's easy to ship. It's lightweight, it's easy to ship. You don't have to pad it, you don't have to put it in a box. Because it's silicone, it's not going to break during shipping. So that was a big, big strength for us. Not something we mentioned on the sales page, but on the sales page we actually mentioned, hey, it's silicone, so this thing is going to stand up to all kind of abuse. Okay, so that was a big thing. Now the other thing is we knew that one of the strengths of our product was that it would always start a conversation when it's in your glass. So we mentioned that right on the page. It's a conversation starter, okay? So a conversation starter. And that was really, really the big strength of our product. It always will help you start a conversation. Now, that's not what people are going to tell themselves when they buy this. That's not, it's not just to start a conversation, but that's the number one reason they actually buy this product is because it's a conversation starter. The other reasons, the logical reason that they're going to buy this is because of the roundness. It's going to actually keep your drink colder longer. And that's the big thing there. And the high-grade silicone, well, it's going to, last longer and all those things. These are logical reasons, but the real reason people buy this and the biggest strength is because it's a conversation starter. It gives them the ability to start a conversation about something that they like. So really, long story short, in the strengths of our product, I want you to see 2 different kinds of strengths. You've got your logical strengths, and then you've got the reason people really buy it, which is the emotional strengths. So with everything that you're selling, when you actually sit down, I want you to sit down and write down the strengths of your product, the features, and what are the benefits behind those features. The feature would be it's blue, and it's blue. It being blue is good for you because, yeah, there you go. And that's how you do that. And with ours, we've got round ice, and the round ice is good for you because it melts slower. Okay, so those are the things. So keep in mind, this emotional reason, the emotional feature is going to be the reason they actually buy it. These logical reasons, you might just say, well, why don't I just have a bunch of emotional reasons? Because the logical reasons are what they'll tell other people and as an excuse of why they buy the product. So anytime you talk about your strengths and you start really writing these down, understand you need to have at least one really, really good emotional strength, okay? Something that really gets their emotions going, and it's the real reason that they buy this. It's the same reason why, I would spend money on a trainer. I can tell myself that I want to be, fit. I want to be able to stay awake longer. I don't want to be so tired today. I don't want to get sick as much. Now, those are all very good reasons and real reasons why I would want to get in shape and get a trainer. But the real reason is I want to look better naked, right? Yeah, that's the thing we're not going to tell anybody, but that is a very real reason, and that's a real motivator as to why we get a trainer. The other things, though, is we have to have those logical reasons that we tell people. So when you sit down, before you actually go in and you do your branding hardcore, you have to know the strengths of your product. Before you ever put a label like we did on Whiskey Baller on your product, you need to know some of the strengths. Knowing those things will help you actually create this, because you can give this stuff to your designer and it will actually help shape how they do the logo, okay? And that's the thing. And let me explain this to you because I think it's important. If you look here at the top, you see we've got an ice ball that's just barely out of the whiskey. And one of the big things that we had was the perfect size while drinking with a friend, okay? So that's the thing. The size of the ball that we actually ended up branding was a very big deal for us. Okay, so there you go, strengths. When you're actually sitting down, before you do anything with a logo, you do anything with your branding, or you create your story, you have to look at your product and say, what are the strengths behind my product? And how can I really bring those out? All right, we'll talk a little bit later about how to write this perfect page here. And I'll actually go through where we pulled a lot of these and the examples that we've got. I'll go through that in just a few. But in the next section, I'm going to talk about weaknesses of your product and how you can actually turn those weaknesses into a strength. And I'll actually share with you a weakness of the Whiskey Baller product that we turned into something that was pretty awesome. All right, I'll see you in the next video. All right, Dr. Ben back here with you, and I'm going to let you in on some secrets here behind Whiskey Baller and what I thought was an extreme mess up on my part that actually turned into something that was really, really good. The first time I actually ordered one of these molds, and we were testing the product out, I ordered it, and they were really small. Like, I thought it was going to be a much bigger ball that you could only fit one in one of these glasses, and I was really disappointed when I saw that these were not 4 of the big ice balls. And at first, I thought that was a huge, huge weakness. And then the more I looked at it, the more I thought, you know what? This could actually be a strength, because this is a perfect opportunity for us to be unique with a lot of other things that are out there, because one of the main competitors we had was someone that was selling just the single ball molds, and those single ball molds were one of their main products. So this allowed us to stand up against probably our main competitor at the time by having something that was a little different. Now, let me show you another big weakness of the Whiskey Baller product, and I'm going to talk to you more about your products. If you were to go into this particular movie, and you were really to watch closely, if you look here at the top of these molds, sometimes the ice overflows. And sometimes it's not a super clean ice ball mold that comes out of this thing. It's got ice in between it, it's got ice on the top, and it's something that's kind of a problem. So real quick, if you were to actually go to the Whiskey Baller site and watch this video, I'm not going to go through it, but one of the key components that we have on this video is actually me crunching up the ice inside of the mold, and it became something that was very interesting because people really gravitated towards that part of the video. And that's what was interesting. We thought, hey, it's got extra stuff on the ice, it's all over the place, it's not going to be like this neat little ball that comes out, but we turned it into a strength by having that process of crunching the ice up. So we actually turned that into a selling point because it's something that is part of the process. Now, when you're actually building a product, you got to think, does your product have a ceremony that goes with it? Okay, now this comes back into building strengths for your product. But products that have a ceremony that go with it, it's a very, very cool thing. So at first we thought, okay, man, all this effort to break this ice up, wouldn't it be nice if it just made this awesome mold? Well, what's funny is people love to have a ceremony that goes with things. And let me explain to you kind of what I mean by that. Let's say that you buy a new TV. Okay, maybe you have a husband or a wife, someone that likes to set up certain things and they don't like to read the directions. The actual ceremony of going through the process is a big deal. Let's say that it's Christmas and you have this tradition of putting up the Christmas tree, but you don't buy a Christmas tree that is one of those fake ones. You actually have to go to the woods, you have to cut a tree down, and maybe that's just a southern thing, right? But you have to go cut a tree down and put up a real tree. It's not just about the product always, it's about the ceremony that goes with it. So we actually said, crap, we've got this whiskey mold and it's, the ice is not neat sometimes when you do it, but we said, how can we bring in some sort of ceremony on this so that that's a part of the process, breaking up the ice? And go watch this video on the Whiskey Baller site and you'll see what I mean when I break up the ice on the video, and it looks like a very fun process. So we actually incorporated that, and that was a weakness that we turned into a strength, and we actually are going to incorporate that into all of our branding, that breaking up of the ice process, because it's something that just kind of works. And our particular audience that is all about whiskey and drinking whiskey, you got to think about it. If you know someone who's into drinking whiskey, there is ceremony involved in it. The way you pour it, the way you sip it, the way you put ice into the glass, the way you buy glasses, it's a certain kind of glass. Like, there's a lot of ceremony involved. So we knew introducing a little ceremony into this was a big deal. All right, so that in mind, what are the weaknesses of your product? Like the things that when you have your product in your hand, you're like, man, I wish this wasn't this way. How can you spin that to being something that is a strength, a ceremony that can be a part of the process? What are the things that you can add in that are possibly deal breakers for you right now that you could turn around into being a part of your story. Because you got to think, when you watch this, you'll see that breaking up that ice could be seen as annoying, or we could make it a part of the story. And when you watch this video, you're going to notice it's very much a part of the ceremony and the story of how you use a whiskey baller. So we actually incorporated the entire process of this weakness and made it a big strength by making it a part of the story of how to use whiskey baller. How does whiskey baller work? So that's the thing. When you sit down and you write down your strengths, also write down what you perceive to be the weaknesses of your product. Don't ignore them, because if you ignore them, someone else will find them. But if you embrace them and make them a strength, then it's a very, very big deal. And the easiest way to make it a strength is to incorporate that weakness into your story. How to get around that weakness into the story of your product. Okay, so just a couple examples of this. One of the main things about one of the main things about when you buy certain things. Let's go with new windows. Okay, so let's say you buy new windows for your house. Installing them is a mess, but if you install them correctly and you do it the right way, you've got a very good seal, and it's, no heat escapes, and it becomes something that is challenging to the normal person. But the person who knows how to put in a window, it's a source of pride for them because it is hard. So something that would be seen as hard for most of us, or a pain in the butt for most of us, is also a sense of pride for someone who knows how to do it. Someone that knows how to change a tire, someone that knows how to change oil. It's a pain in the butt for most of us, but those of us that know how to do it, it's something that makes them elevated above society. It gives them social currency, which means maybe they're seen by society as a little bit better. How many of you out there think it's cool that someone knows how to change a tire if you don't? I mean, that may seem simple to some of you. How many of you know how to change the oil in a car when a lot of people don't? How many of you know how to fix a transmission? There's all of these things that really are weaknesses. Having to do this stuff, it's a pain in the butt. Yeah. One of my favorite examples would be stick shift. I don't know how to drive a stick shift, but I think it's cool the people that do know how to drive stick shift. And let's be honest, that's a pain in the butt. But it's been turned into, if you can drive a stick, you're a little more manly, or you're a little cooler. And that's the same thing that you do with your product. You find something that could be a perceived weakness, and you tell a story around it to make it so it really makes the person who goes through that ceremony, goes through that process, or has that skill to use your product, seem a little bit more on top of their game, so that they are elevated in society because of it. I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, feel free to jump in the Facebook group and ask us questions, or into the group, wherever we happen to have the group at the time. Ask questions, and I'll make sure that I get them answered for you, because this is something that each product's a little different, but that's why we are a very social, group in the Arbitrage Magician universe, because every product you got to nail this stuff out. The whole point of this is really writing it down and figuring out. Okay, so sit down, write down, after the last few videos, write down what makes your product unique. What are the features and benefits that really make it unique? If there are no unique features other than maybe your logo, then talk about, really how does it make a person feel when you put this product in front of them? What does it really help them believe about themselves? What story does it help them create? Write the strengths of your product. That's a big feature benefit builder. And then write the weaknesses. And then I want you to start thinking about how can you turn those weaknesses into a strength. I'd be glad to help you, and I know everybody in the group would be glad to help you with that. So there you go. Something that I didn't necessarily think I maybe should mention, but I was like, you know what? I think this is a big part of the Whiskey Baller product and all of our products, the weaknesses. So we have to talk about how to turn those weaknesses into strengths. If you have any trouble building a story or a process around it that turns that weakness into a strength, feel free to hit us up, and we'll make sure we get it done for you. All right, so let's move on in the next video to really dialing things in. And it's about to get very, very interesting. So I'll see you in the next video. You're going to like what we've built after you've gone through these videos and you've made the list that we talked about. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Hey, what's going on? Dr. Ben here. And before we get started with this particular part of session number 3 in Arbitrage 2.0, I want to mention something very important. This is probably one of the most important videos that you're ever going to watch in terms of selling things. And it's going to be extremely short, and there's going to be some things that when you get done with it, you're going to have to think about, and you're going to have to come back and watch it again. But I promise you, inside of what I'm about to tell you is some of the most powerful sales and marketing training that I ever learned, and I hope to pass that on to you. Okay, this is all about the story of your product. Now, this is some deep, high level stuff here, and this is what you have to do to take your product or service to the next level. This is what 99% of the planet, when they're selling something, will not do because it's hard. So you're going to struggle over this, and you're going to create a story for your product, and you're going to dial your story in as your brand develops. You have to understand that this is a living, breathing thing, this story. Okay? So as you go, this is something that needs to grow with your product. All right? That being said, this, as I said, is one of the most important trainings that I can give you. It's not going to be long, it's going to be short, but the idea is to get you to think. Okay, so what we're going to be covering in this is how to create a story based on everything that you've done so far in this module. You know, we've talked about what makes your product unique. We've talked about the strengths. We've talked about the weaknesses and maybe how you turn those weaknesses into a strength. And now that you know those things, and keep in mind, at this point, you should have a really good idea of who your audience is too, down to, you know, almost knowing what their face looks like as a person. You should be able to start to create a story that that particular audience would want to tell about your product. Okay? This is where we start getting into how we brand things. This is where we start getting into a lot of different things as to, you know, what your website looks like, everything. It all revolves around this story. Now, inside of this training, I'm going to be using the Whiskey Baller product and the Whiskey Baller line of products to actually show you how to do this, and hopefully with those examples, you'll be able to take this and move it into your own space too. Okay, so let's just dive in. What are we actually going to be covering? How to create a story. We're going to go over a couple things. First is the simple, which is how to create a story which is based on why you started your company or why you started selling this product. All right, so that's the simple. A little more complicated is a story based on history and facts and how you interweave your product in that. But when I get done showing you the example, that'll be super easy for you to come up with and do. All right. After that, we're going to talk about why stories get passed along. And then I'm going to tell you about 2 layers of things, which we've kind of touched on already, that you can incorporate into your stories and make it much easier to sell your product. Okay. So like I said, this is not going to be anything that's overly long or hard to consume, but you're probably going to want to come back and watch this at various times because it's super easy to forget this stuff, and you get into fact mode with your products and thinking that the facts behind why your product exists, people will just absolutely get it. But by the time this is over, trust me, you'll understand it. And pay really close attention to what I say at the very end of this, because if you understand that, you're going to completely be able to blow away anybody in any market with what you're selling. All right, so let's dive in. First things first, let's talk about simple stories. Simple stories are stories that are behind, you know, why you started your company. So in this mode, and I'll give you an example here in a minute, but in this mode, I want you to think about, I'm going to create a story behind a product that's based on why I created my product in the first place. Now, if you created your product just because you thought it would sell well and money was the prime motivator, this is going to be a lot harder for you to come up with. But if there was an actual reason as to why you thought this product should exist in the world, it's really easy for you to come up with this story. So here's what you do. First thing is you tell them why you started the company. And after that, you're going to walk them through your problem. And then you're going to tell them why you created the solution, which was your product. And then as a bonus, you can tell them about the people that make the company work. So let me kind of tell you how this works. The story of Whiskey Baller. All right. Whiskey Baller started because I was, you know, very public with some very close friends that I liked drinking whiskey. And it was something that, you know, was a part of my life, not a huge part of my life, but, you know, when I was having a party, something like that, I appreciated different kinds of whiskey. So that was, you know, something that my friends knew. So what happened was one day, someone that was a very close friend of mine, she sent me this nice little package, and inside that package was an ice ball mold. And inside of that ice ball mold, you know, it was a little bit of a note. Actually, in the mold was a little bit of a note, and the note said, "Use these in your whiskey at the next party. I promise you'll love it." So I thought that was interesting. You know, a couple weeks went by before we had a little shindig with friends. But at my next shindig with friends, I actually used the mold, put the ice ball in my glass as I was drinking my whiskey, And to my surprise, the only thing that people could talk about all night was this silly ball of ice. They thought it was the neatest thing, and it actually made it super easy to talk to people because I always had, pardon the pun, an icebreaker. And as I would walk through the party, people were commenting, "Oh, that's cool. What is that all about?" And I could actually tell them the story of where I got it, why it existed, because the whole thing that I had learned about this ice ball was that it didn't melt as fast, and that it didn't melt as fast, kept my drink colder longer, and it didn't water down my drink as quickly, and that was the process behind it. And then I had this wonderful friend who had sent me this because she knew that I liked whiskey. So that's the story behind Whiskey Baller. And I want you to take a step back a second. As I told that story, did you draw closer to me? Did you really listen and want to know how it came about and why? Now, that's a very uninteresting story overall because I wanted to keep it quick. There's more details to it, but did you notice that you were really into why Whiskey Baller started? And that's what's very interesting is I told you the history behind the product. Now, once you learn the history behind the product and why we put this in place, and notice I very much focused on the conversation starter aspect because that's what my audience really wants. They want to start a conversation. They want to be it easier to talk to women, to be real honest. At parties, guys, who drink whiskey, it's a great conversation starter, and that's the whole thing. It looks cool. It starts a conversation. And notice how I weave that into the history of why I started the Whiskey Baller Company. It was something that I was sent, and it started all these conversations at a party. The last thing that was really nice is it's always nice to tell about the people that make the company. Okay, we started this company. This is why I thought it was neat, and I wanted my own version of it. I haven't even gotten to that part of the story yet. But after the party, where I took these, I was like, this is cool, but I think it would be even cooler if we had our own line of these products so that I could make them how I wanted to make them. And the reason I wanted to make them myself is I wanted them to be a certain size, and I wanted to be able to control exactly how these things came out of the freezer and the branding behind it. So that's kind of the story. Win, lose, or draw, and I promise you that story will evolve as we grow as a company, but that's kind of the story behind it. Once we get through that part and people know the reason you created the company, then you can tell them stories about people in the company. And one of the cool things about the company is the company exists because it's run by my brother and I. And my brother and I, it gives us an excuse because we live in different towns. It gives us an excuse to get together once a month, drink whiskey, and talk about cool things that are involved with, with our niche, and with our company. So I get to tell stories about my brother. I get to tell stories about the people at Whiskey Baller that make the company. Those are the fun things. So now, you may not have an idea yet of what you want to do based on what I just told you, but the key is the whole story is why did Whiskey Baller come together? What was the problem that I wanted to solve, which is really the conversation aspect? What is the accessory part of the problem, which is why does the product exist, which is the whole point about the ice melting slower? And then why did we start our own company? Why did we put our own thing together? And then tell them about other people that are involved in the company and why they work at the company and their passions behind it. So those are a very simple story. That's how you do it. Why did you get into what you want to sell? What's the key? Or if the main product that you've got is not the product that you're trying to put out there right away, you got to have something behind it, because when people hear a story, they get invested in the product. Okay, and more on that here in a couple minutes. Let's move on to the second kind of story, which is your history or fact-based story. And I got a really good example here in a second. It's another product that we sell at Whiskey Baller. But first things first, let me kind of walk you through this. You need to find a historical story that lines up with your product. Okay, tell the important facts about the story, and then ask yourself, is this story worth passing on? All right, now that may not make much sense until I get to the next part, where I'm going to tell a story about an accessory product that we sell at Whiskey Baller. Okay, so this is a hip flask, and we have the hip flask, and we started selling it at Whiskey Baller, and we call it the Indiana 2033. Okay, so what is the Indiana 2033? Why is the Indiana 2033 hip flask different than every other hip flask that you can buy out there, and why would you pay 3 to 4 times for the Indiana 2033 hip flask? Now, let me tell you the backstory behind hip flask. Hip flask had been something that had existed for centuries. People have always had these little flasks where they could put alcohol in, and they were somewhat, portable. But something very, very interesting happened back in the 1920s. Okay, in the 1920s in the United States, Prohibition was passed. Prohibition was basically, for those of you that don't know, Prohibition was when the United States actually amended the Constitution and made it illegal to sell alcoholic beverages. Okay, now this went on for right around 13 years until 1933. And what really was interesting during that period is instead of, having less alcohol, you actually saw an explosion of alcohol being sold in the US. And it was something that people had to actually hide. So the hip flask actually came into wide popularity because it was an easy way to carry alcohol in a very discreet way. Now, here's what's very interesting. In the state of Indiana, in right around 1920, 1921, they actually banned the sale of the flask. So they knew this flask was being used to hide alcohol. So this was actually like paraphernalia that said, hey, this person is, moving alcohol from one place to the other. So they actually banned this particular flask. So we ended up calling our flask the Indiana 2033 to commemorate when Prohibition had banned alcohol and when the actual flask came into popularity. Now, take a step back for just a second here. We just took this ridiculously boring thing, which was a hip flask, that you get at every bachelor party, guys. Not bachelor party, but maybe at a wedding as best man's gift, or maybe you just a family member got it for you, whatever. We've taken this extremely boring thing, and now we've given you a story to tell besides it. And here's the thing: you can buy a hip flask anywhere, but you can't buy an Indiana 2033 anywhere. You have to buy that from Whiskey Baller. And here's what's interesting. If you want to tell that story, you want to have the authentic model. Okay, more on that in just a second. But that's the key. We have this really cool set of historical facts that we can weave into our product. And I promise you on that one, you got closer and you were listening to every word that I said about how this flask, actually came into being. What was the story behind it? And it's an item that you probably see every day, or not every day, but you know it exists. It's a household name type product, but you probably didn't know all the history behind it. And now you've got a story that you can pass on to someone else. And you know what? The perfect centerpiece to that story is our Whiskey Baller Indiana 2033. And by the way, we're going to be selling this very soon as it comes up, but that's the story that we've been developing behind it. So with any of your products, if there's a nice little tie-in with history or facts that people can pass along, awesome. Okay? So let's talk about why stories get passed, because coming off of those two types of stories, I think it's really, really big to understand why stories get passed. First thing is people have a need for conversation. Okay? And there's several reasons behind this, but people who tell stories and teach are people that have social value. Okay, so when you tell stories, you give people facts, you become more interesting, and you immediately are seen as someone who has more social value. And that goes back to a long time ago. The way that we actually passed information was through telling of stories. Most of our history books came from not written right away, but actually people telling stories back and forth. Not the most, I would say, efficient way to pass information, but it's what worked for a very long time, and that's ingrained in us. Telling stories gives us value in our society, especially if you can teach us a skill or you can teach us something that we can pass on to others. Now, here's the thing. People hate awkward silence, hate it. And it's always nice to have a handy story on hand for any situation. This is someone who's not very social. Me, I'm not a very social person. But as I became more social, or was forced to be more social in my business, it was always nice to have a very cool story that I could tell about any situation. So if you give people that story, yeah, there you go. And here's the real thing that you need to understand. People need justification to buy things, okay? And if you can give them a couple different kinds of justification to buy things, then they're going to buy them, and they're not going to worry about what it actually costs. They'll actually save up for it. So let's talk about those justifications. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but let me dive into it even deeper. There's two story layers to include. Okay, so you've got your stories. We talked about the two different kinds of stories, but here's two layers that you can include in each. You've got the logical benefits of your product, and you've got the emotional benefits of your product. Now, the emotional benefits are the real reason people buy things. So let's talk about that in the context of with Whiskey Baller. Okay, so the emotional benefits are people are buying cool. All right, they're buying something that's going to make them look cool, that starts a conversation. But when someone asks them about the ice ball, they're not going to tell the person, "Well, I bought this to start a conversation with you, and look, it worked." Well, I might do that because that's my business, but you got to understand that's not something people are going to say. That's an emotional thing. People buy Whiskey Baller because it looks cool and it starts conversations. So guys that are drinking and want to start a conversation with a lady, that's an easy icebreaker, okay? Because it's visual and it basically prompts a question. But the logical benefit is what someone has to have in their hand for that conversation. So if someone were to ask, about the ball, then there has to be a logical benefit. So attached to the Whiskey Baller marketing is, hey, these round ice balls melt slower, which means you get a more pure whiskey the entire time you're drinking. And you see how that works. So you have to have those two-layer benefits. You got the logical and you got the emotional. With fitness, and fitness is a very good example of this. Listen, people go get fit primarily, 99% of the time, the main focus and the main motivation behind getting fit, buying a trainer, buying a weight loss product is because people want to get laid more. They want to look better to the opposite sex. They want to look better to whoever they're trying to attract. That is the emotional benefit behind it. But when you talk to someone about losing weight or why you got your trainer, you're not going to tell them that. That just doesn't come off. You're going to tell them the logical benefits. You're going to say, I was tired all the time. I wanted more energy. I needed more. I needed more time with my family. I needed this. I needed that. It's all logical benefits that are the excuse, but the main benefit and why you paid for the gym membership is the emotional benefits that you get. Now, you got to weave these into the story. Whatever story you're telling, whether it be a simple story about why you started the company or a historical, you have to weave in those facts. You have to give that. But here's probably the most important thing I can say to you as a marketer ever. When all things are equal and your product is the exact same as someone else's product, the only thing maybe different is your logo. Don't ever forget this. People will pay more for your product just to have the right to tell its story. Now, let me repeat that because it really, really is important. People will pay more for your product just to have the right to tell its story. And listen, and the perfect example is on my Indiana 2033 flask. You could buy a flask, you could tell that story, but you feel a little silly if you can't flip the flask over and show them the Indiana 2033 on there, because that brings the story home. And on the bottom of our flask, that's something that's written is Indiana 2033. And once you're able to flip it over and actually show them that portion, then it takes the story to a completely different level. And that is the key. People will pay you more for your product that's almost identical as someone else's just to have the right to tell the story that's behind your product, because that is the ultimate passing of things. Now, my logical folks that are listening to this saying, that's stupid, man, and you're right. It's absolutely stupid, but this is how people work. And if you can understand that this is how people work and understand that somewhere deep down, that's how you work too as a human being, somewhere deep down, whether you're the most logical person or not, you're going to start to understand that this is the key to making products go. So that's it. I'm not going to load you up with more information. All I ask is go through this particular video a few times and really start thinking about your product. Use everything we've done thus far is really, you're supposed to write down what are the things that make your product unique on a very fact-based level. What are the things about your product that are strengths? What are the things that are weaknesses that possibly you can turn into strengths, or maybe they're just weaknesses? And then how do you weave these things into a story? Okay, those logical benefits, those emotional benefits, understand it's the emotional that actually sells it, and you need to weave that in your story. But to really give someone an excuse to partake in the emotional benefits of your product, you have to give them at least a couple logical benefits that they can have as an excuse to tell someone who's like, why'd you pay that much money when you could have bought this flask for, $2 on this website? Well, let me tell you why this flask is special. And that's when they get to tell your story. All right, Dr. Ben here. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, this is something that took me a long time to figure out, but once I figured it out, I was able to take everything that I was selling to the absolute next level. All right, hope you enjoyed it. Let's move on to some other things. Now that you've got a story behind your product and you've developed this, It's time to start incorporating that story into all of your branding. And when you're actually talking to your designers and talking to the people taking photos of your thing, or where you're taking your own photos of your thing, now that you've got a story behind it, you can start weaving layers of that story into all of your branding. Your logo, your 3D render, your pictures that you're going to learn how to take of your product, your website design. It can all be weaved into it in very, very subtle ways. All right, Dr. Ben here. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope this got you thinking and this gave you some light bulb moments. I'm excited to see what your story is for your product, and I'm excited to help you develop it too. All right, I'll talk to you in the next video. Hey, Dr. Ben Atkins here, and welcome back. In the last few videos, we've talked, extensively on how to really get down to what makes your product unique, what are its strengths and weaknesses, and what's the story that you've created around your product. Once you have those things, it's time to start building your actual page. Now, this is the page for Whiskey Baller, and you can see the pictures are really, really important. I'll go through how we took these pictures in just a few minutes in a couple of videos down the road. These were all taken with an iPhone, and it doesn't matter what kind of phone you have, but you can probably have a camera that can do exactly what we've got here. So I'll show you that here in a few. The next thing to really go through is, what is all this on this side? How do you actually write this sales copy? And when I even call it sales copy, it makes it sound more ridiculous than what it is. But how do you actually do this? So I'm going to give you a nice overview of how this is put together, and then I'm going to make you really understand why this works. So the first key here is I've got a structure. I've got a little header line, and then I've got some interesting bullet points. Now, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 main bullet points. We've got a bullet point that has to do with our guarantee, and then we lead right into the call to action, which is the add to cart buy button. Okay, so we've got those things in place, and that's important. But let me actually go through why this works. So let me show you this. We always lead off with a little header line, and that could be something really, really simple. When you're ready to drink with a little more class, the original Whiskey Baller is the way to go. Now, the reason why that's there is it leads into it. And the little more class part is present throughout our branding for Whiskey Baller, because we know who our audience is. We know what they're trying to achieve with this product. We know why it's important in their lives. And that leads us in perfectly. After that, we just have to start telling the story and telling the feature benefits. So 4 precisely fitted ice balls per mold. Now that is a feature. Who cares? Nobody cares about 4 ice balls per mold until you tell them why they should care. And this is what we do. This is good for you because this is the perfect size when drinking with a friend or that special someone. Notice how we're setting the stage. We're really putting it in their head that, hey, this is something that's social. Okay, this is something that you want to have as a social thing. So perfect size when drinking with a friend or that special someone in your life is you can fit 2 of the balls in each standard size whiskey glass. And look at this. We have this language about standard size whiskey glass. So we're starting to create a picture in their head. And then, man, they can look right over here and see this glass, and they can see the size. So it all kind of comes together. And rest assured, you'll get the perfect drink every time. Okay? So really interesting. We've almost made it like you can't have a perfect glass of whiskey anymore unless you're using one of these ice ball modes. Now, why is that? And here's the next thing, the state-of-the-art round ice deliciousness. Now, obviously, just came up with the word deliciousness because I wanted it to be something that was a little more stand out. Okay, so I actually put deliciousness in there to get your attention. And you don't have to be a master copywriter to start, but understand that this word is silly. It's, I've seen Taco Bell actually use the word melty. There's just some crazy things that you can do with words that make them stand out and then get people to read a little more. So feel free to use, license to do that. So state-of-the-art round ice deliciousness. Your drink will stay colder longer. Now this is the logical benefit behind why you would have Whiskey Baller. This is what you're going to tell people why you're actually using it. You're not going to tell them that you use it to start a conversation. But your drink won't get watered down nearly as fast as with most ice cubes on the market. This is due to the way the water cools inside of the mold. See the Whiskey Baller freezing guide for more. Now, I actually went in and added something to this. I'm going to show you what I added, and I think you'll dig it. So let me hit refresh. Okay. So the water cools inside the mold and the unique circular shape. So something that I've had in place for a while, but I said, you know what? I want to add to that. And then that's when I said the round ice ball melts slower than the typical cube. So literally saw this, was reading it as I was, walking you through it and said, you know what, I need to add that little extra bit to tell them why it's unique. And I wanted to make it even more apparent why this circular shape was such a big thing. And then we just come out and say it. The round ice ball melts slower than a typical ice cube. Super simple, super repeatable, part of our story. Okay, the next thing is the high grade silicone excellence. Okay, so due to the high quality of the silicone that we used in the whiskey baller mold, you can be assured that it will stand up to all kinds of abuse. It's dishwasher and drunk friend safe. Now, once again, we're playing into that social aspect. We know where people are going to use this, and we're trying to set the stage that this is a social thing. So we're trying to put it in their head of when they'll use this product. And we'll provide you with over 1,000 perfect ice balls over the life of the mold. Now, will this probably last a whole lot longer than 1,000 ice balls? Yeah, absolutely. But that's something that starts to put in your head just how many times you're going to be able to use this. And right now, in your head, you're trying to think, how many times can I use this? And it starts to get you thinking about our product. And that's what's funny. With putting that 1,000 perfect ice balls in there, it takes you to the next level. Now, I've got all kinds of little copywriting tricks in here, but I'm trying to put them out there for you so you can use them. You don't have to use all of these, but trust me, when I said the 1,000 perfect ice balls in this copy, it makes you start thinking and doing math in your head, which means you're thinking about the product more. Interesting how that works, right? All right, the last real big important bullet about the product is conversation starter guarantee. Remember, the whole point of this product is to start a conversation. That's why people really buy it. The Whiskey Baller Small Balls are guaranteed to start a conversation at your next party. Once again, mentioning the social. Your friends, and didn't even have that spelled right, so we go change that. Your friends and loved ones will absolutely love the classiness of their next drink or your money back. Now, look at this. This is, most people want things to be perfect, but I'm glad this accidentally has been caught in there. We've sold the crap out of Whiskey Baller, and I've got this obvious grammatical error in my copy. Like, literally, how crazy is that I've got that awful grammatical error? I mean, that's just making some of you cringe right now. But I guess it's a good thing that we've got it, and I'm saving it right now so it's changed. So let's actually refresh this. Change now. Awesome. What I'm trying to get across to you is don't worry so much about being perfect with this. You're not going to be perfect. This is going to be a constant evolution. We all are never perfect. It's okay. I would rather you have it up and you have something there and you start putting this together than to be perfect. You can always go back and change things. And like I said, we've been selling the crap out of this. This is a classy site with grammatical errors, right? So there you go. So your friends and loved ones will absolutely love the classiness of their next drink or your money back. Now, I love that I have classiness in here and then I had a grammatical error right above it. But hey, there you go. It worked. Okay, so the next one is more of a logical, your protected trust builder. 60-day money-back guarantee. As always, all Whiskey Baller premium products come with their 60-day, no questions and no hassle money-back guarantee. Whiskey Baller ensures your best drinking experience or will replace your product or refund you right away. Refund sent 2 to 4 days after return is received. So what I'm doing with this is I'm actually walking them through the process. What happens if you don't like this product? Because maybe you still don't trust us after reading all this stuff. Maybe I don't have you. So this is actually in place to tip you over the edge, and then we present you with the product. And then, hey, you get to select how many you want, and there you go. Pretty cool, right? So that's it. That's as simply as I can put it, and showing you the back end here. This is what it looks like on the back end with all the pictures, with the product variants that we've got in here. Super, super simple how this has all been put together. And I just want you to know you can do this too. You can literally go in and knock this out of the park. Now, real quick, I think that one of the big things is some of you may be wondering, where did I come up with these in the first place? Where did I come up with all this stuff? Let me show you how this works. Go over to Amazon, search for your product, and then look at who's selling well. As crazy as that is, look who's selling well. Do they have good copy? Not really great copy there. Nope, not really worried about it. What about this one? Any good copy? Silicone cap, BPA free. Maybe BPA free is important. So BPA free, if that's important, okay, write it down. What I do is I go through all of these Amazon listings and I look at all the little features that they've got, and then I actually start adding them to a list. So I have a Word document or whatever that I'll put these on, and then I'll start adding them. Now, here's a good one. Look at all this cool stuff and all these cool things that people have actually put in here. And what you can do is you can start pulling in the things that they've used and then making them your own thing. So relive the that's a great benefit that this person put. Relive the golden cocktail era of the 1950s and 60s because it makes you start thinking about, hey, I'm classy like that. That's cool. So that's cool. Go through these, check all of these listings on here, and then start pulling all these, put them on a list, take a text document, and then starts transforming them into your own. Whatever your product is, you can find some stuff on Amazon, other product sites, see how they're selling their stuff, and then decide, hey, what are the four most important for me, and then start testing with traffic. The thing is I always have 4 to start out, not too many, not too little, and then I always end with our guarantee because I know at that point, once they've made it past these 4, they're ready to go. I just have to really give them the idea that, hey, you can trust us, and we're taking all the risk. So that's how we do it. That's how you put it together a listing. The thing is you can't really do this a really great way until you know your story. You know your audience, you know the story because you will weave your story into this. And you can see I've already started to weave certain things about our story into this. And as time progresses, I promise you we'll continue to weave this even further. Your story doesn't have to be perfect. Your story will evolve over time, but that's how you start weaving that stuff into your copy on your page. All right, I hope that makes sense. After this, we're going to start getting into some fun stuff, which is how to actually take pictures, how to do 3D renderings, all that fun, good stuff. So I'll see you in the next few videos. Hope you enjoyed this one. Hope it helped you with the copy on your page and how to incorporate your stories and your feature benefits into that. Hey, Dr. Ben Atkins back here with you. And now that we've gone through our story, how our product really is put together and, who we're selling to, it's time to start creating our branding around that. And this is where things really start to get fun. Because now you know really what your product is about. You know the story behind it. And now you want a branding that affects that. And it really pushes that out to the masses in a very cool way. So there's a couple ways you can do this, and I'm going to give you some suggestions here. If you are looking to just get a logo done so that you can send to your person that's manufacturing your product and they can put it on your product for you, there's a couple ways you can go about this. If you're wanting to get a 3D rendering done as well, I would recommend that we go through the 99 designs process. So what I want you to do is just skip over to the 3D rendering video if you're also wanting to get a 3D render done of your logo. Now, if you're not wanting to do a 3D render and you're going to take the photos yourself, you can actually go a little bit cheaper on the logo side, and I'm going to show you that in this video. Okay, so if you're wanting to take the photos yourself, you think that you're going to be able to handle it based on what I'm going to show you in the next video with taking your own photos, then I would say order your logo from these guys because it's going to be a little bit cheaper. So Logo Nerds, who are they? I've known these guys for a very long time. I don't know them personally. I've just used their services, and I've always been very impressed with what they have come out with. So now that you know who you are, product-wise, you know your story, this is where you're going to go. LogoNerds.com, we're going to go into order. Okay, and what you're going to do is you're going to use the $47 package. This gives you web-ready formats that you can use on your site. So, with whiskeyballer.com, we have a logo that we can use there. We've got print-ready formats, so you can actually send them to the person who manufactures your product, and they can put it on the product. And you get 6 different concept choices. So they'll send you 6 different things. They'll do revisions for you, and you get all of this done in about 3 to 5 business days, which is pretty stinking awesome. So this is what you do. You go to Get Started Now. And you've got a couple things. You have to set up, your username and password with their site. But the most important thing is here. Let me go down the list here. So in this, you have to be as specific as possible. Exact name you would like to be used in your logo. So for us, it would be Whiskey Baller. Okay, so Whiskey Baller was the thing. So website address, if you have it, I would lead them to whiskeyballer.com if that's even there. What would the tagline be? We could say something to the effect of, I think it's going to be reclassify your drinks. Or you could say, you know what, no tagline. Nothing right now. All right? Describe your field of business. And right now, I'm just going to start reading for you. Specifically describe your field of business. We market to 25 to 40 or, 25 to 45-year-olds who drink whiskey and they want to, class up their drink. We sell them round ice ball molds, and then you can kind of show them your thing. Target clientele, tell them again, 20 to 45 males who are whiskey drinkers. What colors would you like your logo to use? With me, it was white and black or black and white. You can have different colors based on what you like though. Do you want the logo to be text only, graphic only, text and graphic together? With Whiskey Baller, of course, we did text and graphics. That was a big thing. Please describe any special type of graphic icon you desire. Okay, so give them anything that you think has to be in there. With me, it was a whiskey glass and a ball inside of the thing. So that's what we had there. Describe any ideas you have in mind for your new logo. Give them details on what you think. What should come to your customer's mind when they see your logo? With me, it was class. It was 1960s type class. That's what we were going for, kind of a Mad Men type thing. Who are your competitors and what do you think about their site and their logos? I actually write out the URLs of my competitors. I send them there and I say, I really like this one. I don't like this about it, but I like this one, like this one, like this one. I actually give them this. Please provide reference images and logos that styles you like. So once again, you're referencing other things that you like in that era. I sent some, I sent the Mad Men, with the show Mad Men, because I thought that was exactly who we were going for. So that was an inspiration behind Whiskey Baller. Anything you don't want to see in your logo, tell them that. Three different items to see in your thing. If you want to have, I had a whiskey glass on one of our products in there. And I also sent them a picture of our whiskey mold, just so they could actually see what it looked like and what it created. I sent them a glass with our mold in it, the actual ice cube, and the whiskey mold. And there you go. And like I said, you can do some of these extras if you want, but really, to be honest, the key is just do the basic package, and that's what you got there. Send it in, pay them, they will get to work, and they will send you back several different versions of which you can pick which one you like best. And then when you pick the one you like best, you can actually tell them, I like this one the best, but I want to change this about it. Or you can say, I like the text in this one, but the logo in this one. Can we combine those? And then you can start putting it all together and really rocking it out. So there you go. That's how we do it. That's how we create a logo. Now, if you're doing a 3D rendering, we're going to be covering that in another video. But if you're doing a 3D rendering and you want to bundle the logo and the design service together, go to the 3D rendering video and I'll show you how to bundle all that together so that you can get everything done there. But there you go. That's your logo. Once you get this back, you send the print ready files to your manufacturer and they can start putting it actually on your products. All right, hopefully that helps. That's how we get our logos done. I would love to just give you a bunch of different sites to go to, but I've used these guys with such great success, and I'm just a big fan of how they work. They're very responsive, very professional. So I got to say a million good things about them and using them to actually create your logo for your product. So there you go. I will see you in the next video where we're going to start covering how to take pictures as well as how to get your 3D render done. All right. Hey, Dr. Ben Atkins here, and now I want to talk to you about something that's a lot of fun. It's how to take pictures. Now, all of my pictures are taken in a studio, and I'll actually show you how all this works and show you the raw ghetto footage of everything that I have, but you don't have to have a studio. Below this video, I'm actually going to put a link to a little box, and it's a little white box, and it comes with lights, and you can actually take your product. So if you had the Whiskey Baller product, you could actually take it and place it inside of this little box and it would light it up, and you can actually just take your phone and do it like this. So the big thing that we're going to be using in this process is a phone. This is just an iPhone. Now, honestly, you don't have to have the latest iPhone. You don't have to have the latest Samsung Galaxy, whatever you actually have. You don't have to have too much. You just have to have a camera that's halfway decent. Most of the current smartphones out there are halfway decent at least. You couple that with what I'm putting the link below for you that you're going to order on Amazon. You place your item inside of that, and then you can take a picture. Now, I'm going to show you how we do it, because we have this big full video studio, and I say full video studio, it's just basically a white sheet of paper. And if you have a big white sheet of paper, you can do this as long as you have the lighting. I'll show you the lights that you have to have, and I'll show you how to light things up, and then I'll show you how we actually do the editing too. So I'm about to take you inside and show you how we're actually positioning this stuff and how we're rocking it out with the phone. And I mean, literally with the phone, I'm using the standard camera stuff. I'm uploading it to a computer. The key here is the white background. With the white background, you're able to do a lot with photo editing to really showcase your product. And I'll show you kind of what I mean here in just a second. All right, so I'm going to switch over to actually taping with my phone so you can see how we position things. And from the angle of the phone and the camera, you can see exactly how I'm lining things up. All right, let's hop over to the phone video. All right, so what we've got here is the actual video studio. So I'm going to just kind of take you a circle around here. There's a window there. You can see some lights. You don't need all these lights, okay? I'm just going to show you what you were actually looking at with the camera. Right there is the camera over my shoulder, so you can see what was just filming me, okay? Now you can see some lights over here and, a couple things. Now, the cool thing is
you actually only need like 2 side lights, and you don't need these big monster lights either. You just need a couple lights that are going to basically light up this white paper. Okay, so if you don't have the little box that I suggested to grab on Amazon, I'm going to show you how to pretty easily knock this out. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to take a couple lights, and I'm going to show you how we're putting it in front of white paper. It doesn't have to be this big, because to be honest, this is what we're trying to film. Now, all the whiskey baller pictures are actually sitting on a stool. So the little brown part you're seeing is just a stool that we set our product on, and here's an example of what the product looked like with the glass. Now, it doesn't look as glamorous right now as what it ended up looking like, but let me show you how to actually fix that pretty quick. Okay, so first things first, I'm gonna grab some lights, and I'm doing this in the extremely ghetto fashion so you can actually kind of see how this works. But I'm gonna grab our lights and I'm gonna pull them over. So I'm pulling this light to be closer and to really lighten up the background. So if you look at this, I've got it really close on our white background. Okay, now you could really hack this together at home as long as you had a really white background and some lights that were, you know, really kind of light. Now, right away, you start seeing that our background has gotten lighter because I moved the white closer. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab this other light. I'm sorry if you're getting sick, I really apologize, but I figured the more ghetto, the more you could see how ghetto this actually is. And what we're going to do is we're going to point that light closer. So if you were to take a step back, you can now see there is the product, and there are 2 lights not really shining on the product so much. I mean, you need to have some light hitting the front of the product, but more hitting the white background. So you could almost take 2 lamps and point them at a white background if you don't have the light box. Now my real advice is, if you're taking your own product pictures, you're not doing a 3D render, order the thing off Amazon that is just self-contained and has the lights on the side. Makes it much easier, but I figured I'd show you how we do it. Okay, so I'm going to turn this around and I'm gonna show you how to actually take the picture. All right, so I've turned the camera around, and once again, still shaky because I don't have anything level. I'm actually sitting here on my knees, but you can see exactly what we're taking here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a picture, and then we're gonna go to the computer, and actually do the editing. I promise I will quit with the shaky stuff, but I hope you saw how this works. So here's what we would actually take product shot, okay? If we were to go over here, here's a light, it's hitting a white background. Here's another light, and it's just facing mostly at the background. The only thing that you really need is you need a light that's behind us, and it doesn't have to be a pro light, but just a light that's behind us that's lighting up the front of it just a little bit. Okay, now I'm using something that looks like that. You don't need anything that complicated. Literally, you could use lights in your house, because the main thing is, do you have the side lights that are lighting up this background here? Okay, so I'm gonna take this picture, and then I'm gonna show you how to string it all together using a little photo editing.
All right, after making you sit through the extremely shaky video and taking the photo, I'm going to show you how we go in and we just make it look a little nicer than even what it looked like in front of the white. All right, so let's jump in. We're going to pixlr.com, Pixlr.com, and you can go into the full editor, but let's just dive into Pixlr Express to keep things super simple. So we're going to launch the web app, and you'll see something that looks a little bit like this. So we're going to go to Browse, and this is the photo that I took with my phone. Okay, so you can see it's not bad, but you know, it doesn't look as great as we would like it to. It still looks like a real, a real life photo. So let's actually go in and let's change things. We're going to click on Adjustments, and we're going to go over to the Contrast feature right away. So what we're going to do is we're going to go Contrast. We're going to take that up quite a bit, and you can see immediately huge difference just with taking the contrast up. Now we might do the brightness just a little bit to really make things stand out, and there we go. And that's the majority of what we're doing when we do this, is we're just trying to hit that perfect balance. Okay, and you'll see it when you really find it, you'll see it. Now we might want some of the edges of the glass to come back in, so we can come down a little bit, or we can take the brightness down just a little bit. Okay, now see, we've got, I would love for that logo to be wider, but I don't think I'm going to accomplish that with the brightness. So let's stick right there, and let's kind of go from there. The contrast is the main setting. Okay, from there I'm going to do a little bit of a brighten, and what this does is this gives you a little bit of a brush that you can use. So I'm going to take that up and watch what happens as I put it over the logo. We get much brighter right out of the gate. And if you have any background elements that you feel like, man, that should be brighter and really want to take it up a notch, then you can go in and you can actually get your background to be even lighter. Okay, so that's what you want to do there. Now, a couple things is you may notice if you're really looking close that we overdid the brightness. So it's actually taking my black part and it's making it bright. So let's cancel that and I'll show you how to fix that. We'll go in, we're going to do a smaller brush size, and we're just going to kind of do little splotches over where we want it to be a little bit brighter. You can take your brush size down. There you go. And I can actually trace out without it causing too much of an issue. And then we just make our logo and the white parts a little bit brighter. Super simple, nothing too over the top, but it really adds a ton of difference when you get this. So you're going to click Save, and you're going to save this, and it's going to ask you where you want to save it. Whiskey Baller sample, done. So we're going to save this right here. Okay, so watch this, and let's actually go into my desktop, and let's open these two. So there's the original, there's our fixed. Original, fixed. Not much difference, it's subtle, but you can tell much more gray and real life, dingy, and then just that little bit of a difference makes it a lot more worthy of where we're at, and that's how we do it. If you're not doing a 3D render, then this is an excellent way to do it. This is how we shot all of the Whiskey Baller photos for our site initially. Hope you love it. Hopefully that helps. And yeah, I hope you go do this and rock it out yourself.
All right, so a lot of people decide to skip over the whole process of taking their own photos, and they want to get an actual 3D render done of their product. So if you want to do that, I want to show you how to get a 3D render done of your product with a logo on it, and how to do it so that you don't have to take pictures at all. So you get those really beautiful white background pictures. And let me kind of show you what I mean by this. If we were to go into Amazon right now and we were to actually search, let's just search for a supplement, okay? So something like Garcinia Cambogia. Never heard of that, right? So here's what's interesting. If we were to click on this, this is not an actual bottle. Nobody took a picture of a bottle, and this is not a real bottle. This is actually a 3D render of a bottle and a label on it. So it's not real, but it looks really good. And it's on a background where it's, you know, represented well, and, you know, it makes a good representation of your product. Okay, so super simple. That's what a 3D render basically is it looks stinking real. Just like this phone here, you know, these are 3D renders. It's something that's, you know, pretty easy to see. That book's not real, that's a 3D render. So what I'm going to show you is how to actually get a 3D render done and get your logo created at the same time. So we're going to a site called 99 Designs. And 99 Designs is pretty cool because you're going to get a lot of different people competing for your money. Okay, so let me go through and show you how this basically works. We're going to go into Browse Categories, and we're going to go down to this Packaging and Label section. Okay, so we're going to go to Product Label. Okay, click on Product Label. And now we're going to get a product label for a design you love. Now you can see, look at all these really, really cool 3D renderings of products, and pretty awesome, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to click Get Started Now. All right, so you got a couple things. What language will you write your brief in? English. What is your organization name? So for me, it's going to be Whiskey Baller. All right. Describe what your organization or product does and its target audience. Okay. We create a silicone mold that makes round ice ball molds, which our audience uses to make their drinks a little more classy. Okay, whatever you want to do, but put that in there. So our industry is, we can actually get into more of a food and drink type thing. Okay, so that's what we're going to start with. Now you can select a lot of different things, but here we actually have to put in, describe what you want designed. So I've got a little template for you, and I'm actually going to pull this up, and I'm going to read this. I'm going to put this in, and then we're going to actually read it. So pop this in here, and then I'll actually make this big so that you can see it. Okay, let's do a little zoom for you. There you go. So describe what you want designed. All right, so here's how this actually works. Product, name of the product, Whiskey Baller. What your product does. Well, what I just actually wrote up here, you know, you can actually do it, but just make sure you spell it right. And then we've got
a couple key things here. So the design needs to be done by you, but I would like to have it, I would like it to have and then just a certain style. So for me, it was a 60s Mad Men-esque type style or a feel. I've included examples below of sites products that fit what we're going for in terms of style. So we'll get into that in a second. I would like both a label design, okay, so a label logo, you can change that to logo if it fits you or label if it fits you more. Label design in print ready format as well as 3D renderings of the product with the logo design on the product. I will need the resolution to minimum be 1200 by 1200 on a pure white background, or however you want it. If you want it on a black background, say that, so that we can display it on our website. In short, logo design, print ready files to give to the manufacturer to print on our product, 3D rendering of the product and logo on a white background. I've attached images of my product and I have an arrow pointing to the area where I want the logo to be. Now you actually have to take a picture of your product and then edit it a little bit and put it where you want the logo to actually be. All right, this product is used by, give the demographics, males, 25 to 45, whatever, and then give some URLs of some places that they can see the style that you want. So just find on the web some places where they can go see the style that you're going for, and then at the bottom say, if you have any questions, please ask. Now I've included this template inside underneath this video, so you can pull this stuff up and just pop this in and then fill in the information of what you want. But one of the big things that I like to give competitor URLs, or not necessarily even competitor URLs, but URLs of places that are using the style that I like. With Whiskey Baller, it was very centered in the TV show Mad Men, and that's the real style we were going for with what we were doing. Okay, so there you go. Is there anything else you want to communicate? If you got something special you need to say, let them know. And then, like I said, I take pictures of my actual ice ball mold, and then I actually photoshopped, or I'll show you in our actual photo stuff, you can use Pixlr, which is an image that's online, and we talked about that a little bit in Arbitrage 1.0. You can actually use that to draw the arrows where you want your logo to be over the top of your pictures. These don't have to be fancy pictures. They just have to be pictures that really show all angles of your product and what it looks like. Okay, so that's what you do. Then you're going to hit next. Now, how this actually works is once you go through this process, they're going to start submitting several types of designs, and you can actually go in and pick a winner with your design. So you're going to get a lot of different designs come in. Some you're going to love, some you're not going to love, but the idea is you get to pick a winner and you get to say, this is what I want it to look like, and then you can actually give some feedback on those things too. Once you pick a winner, then your money goes to who it's supposed to go to. Now the cool thing is you either find a design you love or you get your money back. All right, so you're going to get your 3D rendering, which is that beautiful setup that looks, something like this. So you can display it on your site. If you go to Whiskey Baller, we didn't actually do this with Whiskey Baller. Whiskey Baller was actually photos, which I showed you before. But if you actually go through this process, you'll get something with a nice white background that's beautiful to display on your site. Now, of course, this is a little different based on whatever product you actually are selling out there yourself. But that should give you the general idea of how to start. If you have any questions, feel free to dive into the group and ask, and I would be glad to answer them for you. All right, that's how you use 99 Designs. We've got the template so you can get started. Past that, feel free to ask any questions, and I'll get them answered for you. All right, I'm excited for you to get this thing going. And like I said, this gets super easy. If we get on to the next page, one of the main things here is really what you select package wise. And you could go with this silver, gold, platinum, whatever. You're gonna get a ton of designs, but the $299 bronze package is pretty much where you need to start. Nothing crazy. You can give it a different title. You can promote your contest if you want. You can have them put it out to Twitter, and that pays more, but really you don't have to do any of that. Do the $299 package, give it a title, and then after that, tell them how long you want it to be. The more rush you are on this, the more it's going to cost you. But that's up to you. Like I said, with me, go with this if you're not in any hurry, and you're good to go, and everything's good there. That's how you use 99 Designs. Super simple. You're going to get a lot of really quality stuff back, and they guarantee their work as a site, which is pretty cool. You pay on the next page, and you're good to go. All right, Dr. Ben here. Hope you enjoyed this, and it helped you out, and I will see you in the next video. Hey, what's up? Dr. Ben Atkins here, and let's talk about packaging. So I want to show you real quick the actual packaging that we use for Whiskey Baller so that you can mimic it and use it yourself.
So this is basically what you get and what our shipping people actually have. They have this nice little card. They've got the actual whiskey baller, which our manufacturer sends in this nice plastic so it looks nice and fresh. And then we've got this white little mailer, and you can see kind of how this opens up here. Super simple. So this actually, you put it inside of here and the card goes with it, so everything ships pretty easily. Now, all this is pretty simple. Standard mailer. Now, some of you may have fragile products. This is not going to work. You're going to have to spend more money on a box or something that keeps it safe. But with our silicone, this was part of our design. The silicone, we can put it in a very lightweight plastic bag so our shipping costs stay down, and you're not going to damage this because it's actually silicone. And then the card goes in right after. So the whole key here is keep the weight light, because the more the weight of your package goes up, not just this, it's everything you put in, the harder it is for you to actually get a good shipping price per item, and that cuts into your margins. So the one key thing is I want to show you this. This is our card, and I'll take pictures of this for you so you can see it. But this particular card says a couple things. It's got the Whiskey Baller branding right there. And on the back, it's got a QR code that you can scan, and it also has a little message. That message says, "Thank you for purchasing your very own Whiskey Baller. We believe that drinking can and should be a classy affair." Once again, that's kind of our mission statement. For tips on how to use your new Whiskey Baller, please visit whiskeyballer.com/drinkable. Welcome to our family, and then it's got my signature. That's how it works. Super, super simple. Nothing overly fancy about this, but it's a nice way to welcome them to the family. And like I said, you'll have pictures of all this. So packaging should be simple. Now, what we're going to be including very soon in this package is an upsell offer. So we're going to give people an opportunity to actually purchase the upsell, which is either a membership or another product that's a little more high ticket. And we'll also give them a discount for their first month on the membership, or a percentage off of the upsell products that would be cheaper than it would be actually on the site. So the whole key with your packaging is balancing size and weight and how that affects your margins, with making sure that you give people an experience. Because do we have to put this card in here? No. But this extra touch, this small extra touch, is what makes all the difference. And it's really saying, hey, these guys actually put a little bit more into it than just shipping a product to people. Now, can we improve upon this? Of course we can. But that's something that we'll handle down the road. And we handle it when we have new offerings, new things to put in, new things to offer our customers. So Dr. Ben here, nothing overly fancy here. I just wanted you to see how simple it can be when you do a little bit of planning and you know what your brand is all about. Simple plastic mailer bag that our shipping people put it in. We've got our product that comes from the manufacturer, the Whiskey Baller, and then we've got a little business card that is extremely branded, and as I said, you'll have pictures of all these things, that really tells our story and really tells people, hey, we're excited about you being around. All right, Dr. Ben here. Hope you enjoyed the quick walkthrough of packaging. The real thing behind that is how do you continue to tell your story after the purchase? And the packaging and how that arrives can be a big thing. The outside packaging is not a huge deal. It's what's inside and what you're saying to them after they've bought from you that is really, really the big point here. And I hope you learned a little bit of something by seeing what we're doing with the Whiskey Baller brand, and hopefully that simplifies things for you a little bit. The outside's not as important. It's about what's on the inside of the package, what's those little tiny business cards. And like I said, this is just a business card, nothing fancy, but it does tell a story and it does help us continue to talk the way we want to talk to our clients. All right, I will talk with you soon. I hope you enjoy this. I'll see you in the next vid.